See, like if I do this, that's like terrible.
It...
That's like terrible for the network because on the network and how much.
Oh, now we're here to.
Well, I just messed up the network doing that.
I was going to say, it's like the doctor who said the old joke about you go to the doctor and say, doctor, it hurts when I do this. And the doctor says, well, then don't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning. It's a fabulous morning, Tuesday, and we're here with Dr. Temple Grandin, and we've already had technical difficulties. I am told that we are live right now on YouTube, but that we have not been able to go live on Facebook. So I'm asking everyone who's watching us on YouTube to go to your Facebook and tell people to come and watch us on YouTube, because we're here with Dr. Temple Grandin, and I don't know, the internet is broken. But we're still here, and Dr. Grandin is ready to answer your questions, and so you can be sending them into us on YouTube right now. We will get this reposted on Facebook later on today, but I don't know, Facebook is not my friend today, or the internet is not my friend. I'm not sure which one, but I'll tell you who I do count as a friend is Dr. Temple Grandin. She's one of my favorite people on this planet, and she is a celebrated author and a teacher and an advocate. And right before we went live, we were talking about how books, ebooks, and hardcover books, and how it might be a little bit difficult to get books, but we want you to know that it is
easy to get. Excuse me, I just did something that might make the network. Ebooks,
we were talking.
Ebooks aren't where the problem is. Ebooks work fine. Amazon's got plenty of ebooks. That's where.
But it's the hardcover that people might think is hard.
Paper, it's the physical books where there's a problem.
But
it's like the internet's gotten overloaded. All the warehouse distribution supply chains are also completely overloaded.
But there are a couple of places where they can go to get your hardcover books, and they won't have a big delay, and there won't be a big wait. For instance, they can go to Future Horizons,
right,
to their website, and they can order all of your books from right there. Yeah, so
all my physical books are available there, and then I have some textbooks, and one of my textbooks publishers is going to be setting up a website to distribute directly for physical books.
There you go. So don't despair. Don't despair. Don't do without books, but find different places to order them if they're being held up for you. So Temple, we're so thrilled to have you twice in the month of April. The last time we talked to you was April 2nd, World Autism Awareness Day. We just want to do it first because we got tons of questions that have already come in.
Okay.
But first, just want to check in with you. How are you doing in this period of isolation?
Well, I'm working right now on updating my Improving Animal Welfare, a Practical Approach book. I have a number of guest authors in that. It's a textbook, which makes it a little pricey since it is a textbook. And most of my guest authors are getting things done. Actually, I've had plenty of time to work on it. I might be doing an even better job of updating it. Been looking up on all kinds of articles to add to it right here. This is stuff I just looked up this morning. I print out.
I always love to know what you're researching, because the last time we had talked to you, you were researching protein symmetry, and it was some beautiful artwork. As you said, art in your body. What were you researching this morning, or is it secret?
It's not a secret. I was simply looking up problems with older dairy cows, and that sometimes they get into very bad condition. And I was trying to just get some updated data on that. Because
very cool.
The second edition came out in 2015, and for the new 20 or 21 edition, I want to try to have the newer references. It's not changing a great deal. It's just updating it. So I was just looking up new information on bruises and survey that my student did at cow-calf producers on management practices.
Very cool.
That.
I was telling you earlier that the first time I met you, the first time I interviewed you, we brought one of the people on our crew brought cows, plastic
Yes.
cows, and you signed this one for me. You
Okay.
actually signed a couple of them, and Autism Live gave some away to some really incredible people. I don't know if you know, that's how we ended up going to NASA together.
Yes.
You signed a cow for me, and I gave it to one of the flight directors at NASA, and he was like, "Is this what I think it is? Is this a cow signed by Temple Grandin?" And I said, "Yeah." And he was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you've met her." And I said, "She would love to come here." And he, "Why haven't you invited her?" And that's how that whole thing happened. We went to NASA together and toured. It was Temple, my small crew, and what was it, like 5 astronauts that were following you around all day?
That was like a super, super fun trip.
It was a great day. I have the video from it, and at some point we have to make a short film about that, about you going to NASA, because it's some pretty fabulous video. But okay, that's neither here nor there. Let's get into some questions, shall we? Because we have a lot of people voting. I just want to tell everybody, I have pages of questions that people wrote in. Can you see multiple pages? Plus, which we're taking questions right now on Facebook, on YouTube, on Periscope, and on Twitter. So if you are on one of those mediums and it seems that I am ignoring your question, please know that we're buried in questions, but keep them coming in. Okay, first question. I really want to know how Dr. Grandin started eating any kind of food. Did she work on sensory issues? Did she just decide to start trying different foods? My son is 11 years old, and since he was 2 years, became very selective. He says that he will eat once. He says he will eat once he went to secondary school, but he changes his mind and keep telling me that when he turns 20, he will eat then. He is a healthy boy, but really worries me that he doesn't want to eat like everybody else. So how did you, because you were selective for a while.
Well, actually, I was a good eater. The reason why I was eating the yogurt and Jell-O in the movie is when I got in my 20s, I had terrible problems with anxiety, terrible colitis attacks. And then when I went on antidepressant medication, real low doses of it, the colitis attacks actually stopped because my nervous system wasn't in such a state of stress. But there were times where the colitis attacks were so bad that everything went through me. And that's why I ate yogurt and Jell-O. And then I would gradually wean off of that. And I actually hated yogurt. I had one doctor wanted me to drink buttermilk. That's like liquid vomit. I had to chug that stuff down. Ugh.
Yeah.
And then I would wean back gradually onto regular food, some saltine crackers. And then I'll go and do a talk, and there in the green room's a whole bunch of little Jell-O things. I just hate Jell-O. It was something I had to do because of colitis. But let's just talk about kids that are picky eaters. One way to help to get them into it is trying new things is let them get involved with food preparation, where they can play with the food out in the kitchen. We don't play with food at the dining room table. Want to have manners there, but in the kitchen we can play with food and explore it. Sometimes that's helpful. And one of my big concerns, if a kid just eats just 2 really restricted things, is the old vitamin deficiency diseases. I was just looking at one of my autism newsletters, and there was some kids that got scurvy. That's vitamin C deficiency, because of being on a very, very restricted diet, and they weren't taking any vitamins. Get food preparation. Just get them involved in that. And they get to play with it, and then they might want to taste it, and that's a simple thing to do.
Food is a very sensory experience. I love that idea. Another question. Good morning, Dr. Grandin. I have a 10-year-old son diagnosed at 5 years old, went from verbal to nonverbal. We started ABA therapy at 5 years, and he has a lot of words now dominated by a strong mouth stimulation, echoing, scripting almost 95% of the day. Because of his scripting behavior, the school hold him at ASD 1. He knows his alphabet, his numbers, some sight words. He can read short phrases, well potty trained since 2 years, very independent. I'm trying all I know. Please help me. Any strategies that can help us decrease the echoing?
Well, there's 3 ways basically the brain's be messed up on speech. When I was a little kid, the grown-ups talked fast. I thought grown-ups had a foreign language. That's why that was grown-up talk. And I have some auditory processing. And one thing my speech teacher did with me, she'd hold up a cup, or maybe she'd hold up a pen, and she'd say pen, and then she'd say pen, where she'd enunciate it, and she'd switch back and forth. And then I had problems with getting speech out. I personally was never echolalic, where I might recite a movie script out, but there been some success with echolalic kids. If you can take the movie script that they don't know what it means, they yak out a movie script. Why a movie script? Because when they watch that on the television, it's always said the same way. Like if I said dog, that's a Harvard accent. Dog, that's some other accent. See, it sounds like a different word, but that TV always says it exactly the same way. So that's why they'll script a commercial or a movie that they can play over and over again. But sometimes you can work some of the words from that movie into the real world. They'll start to learn that language is real. Also, a lot of kids have a lot of sensory issues. And kids that don't get functional language often live in a sensory disordered world. Now, there's 2 books I'd really recommend that people read where they have a kid that does not get really good functional language. And one is Tito Mukapadahe, How Can I Talk If My Lips Don't Move? It's available online as an ebook. Okay, ebook distribution, there's no problem. You can get ebooks, audiobooks, that's just fine. It's physical books where there's problems. But this book, Tito Mukapadahe, he has a lot of movements he can't control, looks really severe, but he's basically got a locked-in syndrome. There's a good brain in there, and he can type independently. I have seen him. And he talks about a sensory disordered world. His mom always took him out there, but you read that book, you're really going to get some insight into what maybe your child might be experiencing. And I want to use the word might. Another really good book is the sequel to The Reason I Jump. I can never remember the exact title because it's something like Fall Down 5 times, Get Up 9 times, but it's the sequel. And he describes things like not being able to control his movements, that he was sort of like a broken robot. And these books will give you insight, these people that type completely independently, the sequel to The Reason I Jump. And that's all of this, they're available in electronic. And then, of course, I always like to promote my own book, The Way I See It, which has just come out in a new edition, available electronically from Amazon, physical book from Future Horizons.
Wonderful. So the sequel is Fall Down 7 times, Get Up 8. I can remember the 78, but I want to know how long did it take you before you could say Tito? I can't even pronounce his last name. How long did it take you to learn that, Temple?
Well, that took a little while. And don't ask me how to spell it.
Okay.
And the title of his book is How Can I Talk If My Lips Don't Move? But if you're working with, I'm not talking about 3-year-olds here. I don't recommend these books for people with 3-year-olds. But you got an older kid, doesn't have functional language. I think these books are must reads because they're going to give you tremendous insight into what's going on.
Wonderful. Somebody wants to know, my 13-year-old son seems to avoid speaking about autism-related conversations. At one point, I felt he was depressed. Suggestions?
Well, the thing is, things interesting on how you view autism. You go out to Silicon Valley, to big tech companies that bring you the technology we're using, and they avoid the label. They don't want to be labeled, with a disability. And then I see other kids where autism becomes their entire identity. I don't think that's good either. Maybe something more in the middle might be better. For me, autism is an important part of who I am, but being a scientist and a problem solver right now, I work on a lot of different things trying to solve problems. That's that comes first for me. I think I just talked to a really interesting person. I have to keep some confidentiality. This is a person who works for a major important technological stuff, had an IQ off the charts in everything, never got labeled with autism, but then she had a high IQ. She said, well, I could go places. Well, she was waiting on tables one day and she waited on 2 people that opened up to the door into a fabulous technological career. I have to keep confidentiality, but she recognized, and then when the guys talked to her, they recognized her intelligence and she was invited right in. That's back door. And the thing is, she recognized that back door, but her label was high IQ. That was the only label that she had. She's a person, 50s, a bit of an older person. But you see, I did the same thing in my career. There's a scene in the HBO movie where I go up and I get the editor's card because I realized if I wrote for that magazine, that would really help my career. And she recognized the door and she went through it and she was waiting on tables. Sometimes you just don't know who you're waiting on. See, half of all good jobs are gotten through the back door anyway. All good jobs.
I believe that too. Okay, somebody wants to know, glad to see you ladies. What are the signs that a kid will reach a high functioning level? My son is 6 years old. He is functionally verbal and has a moderate level of autism. He has been receiving ABA for 3 years now.
I can't answer specifically, but let's just look at 6 years old. Okay, we'll ask you about the speech. Can he ask questions? Can he request things? Can he read? I was 8 years old and I couldn't read. And mother taught me with phonics. And I went very quickly from the 3rd grade level up to the 6th grade level of reading. But let's just look at the skills. The thing is, a person with autism or a child with autism, they blossom. I've had parents say, well, I got my kid out doing all these things, got my kid out on a boat, never thought he'd get on a boat. And they get out and do things. You just don't know. But there's a tendency to overprotect. What you want to do is stretch and say, well, would you want to go on a boat or would you want to go for a hike? You know, give them a choice, but get them out there doing things. And they can sometimes really blossom. They can do a lot more than what you think. And,
absolutely.
And I'm a visual thinker, so I don't really relate to terms like level 1 or moderate. I'm going to go, okay, let's just look at the skills. Dress, shower. Let's start with the basics. Potty. Okay, should be learning some reading skills, writing skills. Maybe he has motor issues. Well, then he can type. There's a reason why keyboards were invented. You know, what can he do? It's when kids are really little, you just can't tell. I looked horrible. I looked horrible when I was a real little kid, just horrible.
I want to bring up, since you brought up your mother, that your mom, Eustacia Cutler, is going to be with us on Friday.
Good.
And she's going to be answering questions and she's going to speak a little bit about a bunch of things. And so she's asked that people send their questions in early and that she wants to answer questions on a general nature. We're working out a way that she can meet with people to answer questions individually. She prefers to do it that way. So we're asking for you to send your questions in for Eustacia. You can do that as soon as the show is over, because later on today, I'm going to go over some of the questions with her. But we're really excited to have your mom on Friday.
Well,
Temple.
good. That's just great. But I'm going to be, you know, like that. It's hard. First of all, I don't have enough information to answer things absolutely specifically. But there's a tendency, and I can understand why Silicon Valley avoids the labels, to become the label. Like this lady, I just talked to her. She had high IQ. She started talking to these tech guys. Next thing, they're taking her over to the workplace and they're hiring her.
Yeah. Yes. Because
I'm pretty sure she's on the autism spectrum.
There we go.
Sure. Just in talking to her, and I'm pretty sure she's autistic. I can't say for sure, but.
Right. I love Howie Mandel. He has a phrase. He says, you know, let's stop talking about what somebody can't do. Let's look at what they can do. He says, let's not talk about disability. Let's talk about this ability.
Well, this is what Stephen Hawking has to say. Y'all know who Stephen Hawking is.
Yes.
Concentrate on the things. Your disability does not prevent you from doing well.
There we go. I love it.
I really like that.
I like that too. I also like different but equal, and we know who started that.
Yeah.
That would be you.
Yeah.
Wonderful friend. Okay, next question. Someone told me that fine motor is also connected to oral motor. What are your thoughts about that? They say that their son is having trouble lifting his tongue.
Well, you need to go to a specialist on that. You know, occupational therapist, physical therapist, you definitely need to see a specialist. I am not qualified to.
Have you ever heard of the fine motor, though, being connected to the oral motor? I've never heard that before.
Well, I would definitely go to a specialist. Now, I have my other favorite thing I do, and that's reading scientific papers. Then I might end up going deep into the literature, but I recommend you get professional advice on that.
M says, this is interesting. I'm autistic and you talk about it well. Michelle wants to say hi to you.
Oh, thanks.
Devin says, I'm also autistic with Asperger's syndrome. When I was in hospital, my mother said that I have Asperger's to the nurses, and they did not know a bit about it, which is fascinating. Okay. Next question. My son is 4, and so it's so hard to get him to focus on anything besides his routine play. Any suggestions at all for a 4-year-old who always wants to play the same thing, Temple?
Well, when I was maybe 5 or so, or 6 years old, I would just draw the same horse head over again. And mother would suggest, well, let's draw the rest of the horse's body. Now, I need to, before I can actually give you any specific advice, I need to know what he does over and over again. Because what you want to try to do is take whatever he does. Let's say it's lining up blocks. Let's just say it's that. Well, then let's turn it into a turn-taking game where we're going to take turns lining up the block. I do a block, you do a block. Let's just start out something very simple like that to try to broaden it into a turn-taking game. And when I was that age, there was a lot of emphasis on turn-taking games done with board games, a little bit older card games. You've got to learn to wait your turn. Okay, let's say he's spinning a wheel on a toy car. Well, then we're going to share the car and take turns with it. And then hand the car back and forth. We'll take turns spinning the wheel. Then I want to broaden it out into driving the car around. And we're going to go to different places in the living room, like the bookcase or the chair leg, or something like that. Just very simple things like that, broaden it.
Wonderful. This is a tough one. My 10-year-old nonverbal grandson started hitting himself very hard in his face, leaving bruises, hiding under a blanket, even when going out, and being very disconnected. Doctor said it's puberty. What's your thought? It's heartbreaking.
Well, you better get some professional advice on that. The other thing you've got to look at is exactly when did the behavior start? Okay, this is a basic principle in animal behavior. I don't care if it's dog behavior, horse behavior, you got some kind of a problem. People tend to overgeneralize. I want to know exactly when that started. Puberty comes on somewhat gradually. Maybe there was a traumatic event, something like that, a death in the family. I don't know. But I've got to figure out what the behavior might be related to something. Now, there's some kids that hit themselves, and I've read first-person accounts about this, and they don't even realize they're doing it in some cases. Sometimes occupational therapy, sensory stuff can help on this. But there's a big mistake in animal behavior and human behavior to overgeneralize. And people say, oh, my horse just goes berserk. Well, after questioning the person, I found out there was one specific place where a horse went berserk, and when he was tied up in the cross ties, because he'd had an accident in the cross ties. So then we stopped using cross ties. So I'm going to ask you, when does this behavior occur?
Yeah,
it isn't something. Yeah, and you're going to have to. You need to do something about this. This is serious.
I think, Temple, a lot of in the early years when our kids are diagnosed, a lot of the stuff we hear is that people will say, well, autism, it's a lot of, they do a lot of random, strange behavior. But I know I certainly learned over the years, there's nothing random.
Not random. It's not random.
There's a reason for everything.
Well, what I did, I can remember I was allowed to do an hour after lunch of spinning a brass plate that covered up a bolt on the bed frame. And when I did these repetitive things, it was calming. That's why the kid does it. But the problem is, if you let a kid do it all day, nothing's going to go into his head. It's okay to do a little bit of stimming to calm down. That's okay. But
there you go.
Doing it all day is not okay, because you shut off the brain. I remember doing it. I remember winding up the swings, letting them twirl. It was almost like taking the drug. And so a little bit of just non-hurtful repetitive behavior, like spinning something, is fine. But then should get me out, and we were expected to sit down and have meals together, do games where we take turns, have table manners. If I put my finger in my drink, mother would say, use the spoon to stir it, just manners stuff.
What was it that you loved about spinning the plate? What was it that made you feel better?
I loved watching it, because when I spun something, I'd spin it with different amounts of force. And then I could watch, well, how long would it spin? How would it wobble as it stopped spinning? And tiny little details of how it behaved. Which
is really being scientific.
Yeah, I can remember dribbling sand through my hands, and I would just study each little grain, like looking at it under a microscope. And one thing I loved doing as a child was doing sand castles where you dribble sand through your hands. I really liked doing that. And it's okay to do some of that stuff. But the problem is if a kid does it all day,
Yeah.
they're not gonna learn anything else, like playing video games all the day. Yeah, you might get really good at playing video games, but you're not gonna learn anything else.
Do you still do anything like the spinning the plate or like the sand through your fingers? That's part of your daily?
I do a lot of doodling on papers. I'll do a lot of that kind of stuff. I've got like 25 binder clips in a chain that I'll sometimes manipulate when I'm on the phone.
Love it.
They're in my upstairs office.
So Temple, we have a very special guest who's going to be on the show on Thursday. He is a young man who he's on the autism spectrum. He's an actor and he's a professional actor. He's 17 years old. He was first on Speechless. Then he played an autistic young boy on The Good Doctor. Good. And now he has a great role on the hit Netflix show Locke and Key. Okay. And he plays an autistic young man on that. He's going to be joining us on Thursday. His name is Coby Bird. He's a big fan of yours.
Oh, great.
And,
thank you.
And so I was talking to him and his mom last night. They want to know, do you still utilize something like your cow squisher?
No, that broke about 10 years ago and I never got around to fixing it. So then I started hugging real people. Now we're not allowed to do that now with social distancing. So
was the real people giving you the same thing that the cow squisher was giving you?
Well, I didn't need as much from the cow squisher. Now, one thing that I still have got to do is I got to do a burst of intense exercise every day. And if I don't do it, even taking a low dose of antidepressants, if you want to read about that, that's in my book, Thinking in Pictures. And it's available in ebook, easy to get ebook. And if the medication alone doesn't do it, but a burst of hard exercise. I used to do 100 sit-ups on the bed, and then my sciatic nerve was hurting me. So now I'm doing modified push-ups. Do I like exercising? No, I hate it. But to get up to 100 sit-ups, that took a long time to work up to that. I want to emphasize that. I started out doing like 3. That was 6 months to work up to that.
Wow,
and
I'm impressed.
But if I don't do that burst of hard exercise, then I have trouble with sleeping. And I found that I'd added up like how much airport walking I did. That just doesn't seem to do the same things as the burst of hard exercise.
I've been listening. You said that when you were with us on the 2nd of April, and I've been trying to add a burst of hard exercise, and I find that it's helping me too, Temple. So you've inspired me.
Work up to it slowly. I don't want anybody having a heart attack here. I want to emphasize working up slowly, but there's something, and I think there's starting to be some scientific evidence about a burst of hard exercise where slow walk, I have to get myself breathing hard a bit.
Yeah. Love it. Okay. Somebody's written in and said, I am autistic, but diagnosed as an adult. I am 30 now, was diagnosed 2 years ago. I know that whenever I was a child, I was reading before my 4th birthday, but did not speak until I was 6. When I did finally speak, I was speaking on the same fluency as my peers. And I believe that the reason I was able to speak so well was because my immediate family still spoke to me and would have conversation with me as if I was able to use my voice. What do you think about that, Temple?
I think that's important. I think that's important. One of the things that, Soma did with Tito, and how can I talk with Soma? She took them everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, they were from India, so they go on the outdoor markets and railroad station and all kinds of places like that, noise and stuff. She took them everywhere, and we got to get these kids out doing things. Now, what do you do about the sound sensitivity? Well, I think I may have talked about that before. Give the kid control. Let the kid turn that dreaded hairdryer on and off. And then he's going to find it fun to blow things around the house with it when he can control it.
Okay. We're getting a couple of questions for your mom, which is really great. But I would sort of love to know your opinion on this. They're asking, they want to ask your mom, how do you teach hygiene? They have a daughter who's 18, high functioning autism, has to be reminded about deodorant. It bothers me that she's not mindful about daily care. Now, clearly your mom taught you manners, and she, because you are a professional And, you know, hygiene is a very big deal. I've heard you lecture about people presenting themselves cleanly and getting their hair taken care of. What do you think made that important to you? Was it something that your mom did, or was it something just in you?
It's something that a guy in the construction industry did. You know, there's the scene in the movie where the boss slams down the deodorant. And they actually took two bosses in the movie and combined them. It was actually a construction boss that did that. And I wanted the job. And he basically told me I had to clean it up. It was that simple. And I wanted the job. And that's something. Now, back in the 70s, they had these gunky, awful roll-ons. You know, now the solid sticks, you don't even feel them. There's no excuse for not using solid stick. And I get the unscented type. No, you have to clean it up. It's just that simple.
Do you think it's better coming from somebody other than mom, or do you think it could be from anybody?
Well, the thing that made the big difference on me, it was this was a job I really wanted. And he slammed down the deodorant just like it was shown in the movie and said, "You stink, use it." Exactly what he did. I showed Mick Jackson, the director, exactly how to slam it down. And I realized I had to clean it up. Yeah. No, it doesn't mean that you have to become a different person. I still dress eccentric, but you just can't be a rude, filthy slob.
Do you consider the way you dress eccentric?
Well, it's a little different, but it's important to you know, look presentable, and you know, dirty, filthy T-shirt, that's not okay. You wear a T-shirt, but it needs to be a clean one. And
I seem to recall that there's a story about when you went to go to the Emmys. Was there discussion about what you were going to wear about that? Am I crazy?
Well, no, I wore a shirt that was a gift from my sister. It's a Ralph. My top was Ralph Lauren. My bottom was Walmart. Black Walmart. One of the reasons why I wear Walmart dress pants is because they don't itch. I got to have pants that don't itch, and they make really nice dress pants and not very expensive. But I thought that was kind of funny to have Ralph Lauren on my top and Walmart on the bottom.
Was there somebody who was pressuring you to like wear a ball gown or?
No, it wasn't. I wouldn't wear a ball gown. No.
I mean, and this day and age, I think everybody is allowed to dress how they want to dress. I was
dressed up. There actually was a Ralph Lauren shirt that my sister gave me, and that's the reason why I wore it.
You looked great. Yeah, you looked great. And when Claire won and you stood up, I think we all cried. We all were just like beside ourselves.
And then I grabbed the mic and I said, "Mom, I know you're nervous. Stand up." And then the boom camera came over and took a picture of her. And she stood up.
There was an amazing moment. I'm sure it was an amazing moment for you guys, but it was an amazing moment for all of us, Temple, to see you in that way. It was like winning the Olympics for all of us.
No, it was absolutely wonderful. And one thing with that movie, they got the right team together, and Emily Gerson Sains, she's the one who put that whole project together. And what I learned, you know, you get the right people doing stuff, things come out good. The stuff that's the most accurate stuff in the movie is the visual thinking is shown absolutely accurately. The projects are accurate. Some of my stuff, that doctor scene, and Mother hates that doctor scene, is not accurate. She actually went to a neurologist, and I was recommended to get speech therapy. But what the doctor scene was typical 50s. Right. But the work stuff in the movie is probably the most accurate stuff. And I like the fact it shows visual thinking accurately, so people can understand visual thinking.
You know, I think it's the first time that most people got it, that they were like, oh, and I think a lot of us went, oh, I completely understand that because my brain does that to a degree. Yeah. Like I'm visual too. And I was like, oh, well, my brain does that. It just does it in a slightly different way, but I think visually too. And it made a certain amount of sense for all of us. It was a gift to the world. Well, and I think did as much.
See, Mick Jackson, the director, was a visual thinker, but because I have another big concern in education is with all the algebra requirements, we're screening out visual thinkers. And we got a gigantic shortage of high-end skilled trades today. These are essential. These jobs are never going to go away. Somebody's got to fix the heating and air conditioning, do plumbing, electrical, fix cars. build things with steel. That stuff's
Yeah.
not going to go away.
Okay, we got another question. My daughter is 11 and just diagnosed. It took a long time for professionals to believe us. Why do girls get diagnosed later?
Well, I was just reading on the autism magazines about this. Well, girls tend to be more flexible in their thinking, and they just don't show it. And one of the problems with girls with autism is getting into abusive relationships. That can sometimes be a big problem.
Yeah. Any advice for how a parent might deal with that?
Well, I have a book. Shameless book promoter, but I did a book.
No, please. We love your books.
I did a book with Sean Barron, and he and I kind of have two different kind of takes on some of the dating stuff. And it's called The Unwritten Social Rules from Future Horizons. And one of the little rules they've got in there is not everybody that acts like your friend necessarily is your friend.
Yeah.
And that can be a real big problem area. I can remember other girls would get me to read private stuff to them, and then I found out they were laughing about it. That was in college, and that was very difficult to deal with.
Oh, yeah, no, that would be upsetting. Since you brought it up, I'm going to ask you, but you can tell me it's none of my business and I won't be offended. But since we're talking about dating, would you be interested in talking about any experience that you have had in terms of dating?
I basically, it's not part of my life. When I was in college, I did a little tiny bit of dating with one guy, but I just saw too much abusive stuff going on. Too much drunken angriness. I never saw a marriage I could see myself in. And what I've basically done in my life is I've replaced emotional complexity with intellectual complexity. So when there's a problem, I want to go out and research treatments for COVID because I'd like to not die, for example, or go out and reach something else like book distribution or some other thing. Because one of the things I really like doing is finding practical ways to solve problems.
Yes. Yes, the first time I met you, after we were done with the interview, you were asking me questions about, did my husband and I ever get like dating time? Did we ever get to go out alone? And I was like, no, Temple, we don't have anybody to watch our son. And then you started giving me marriage advice. You started saying to me, no, you're going to have to figure this out. You're going to have to, trade with another mom. And, because you have to have time with your husband where you're not talking about your son. And I started to laugh. And you said, what are you laughing? And I said, I'm just having this wonderful moment where I'm realizing I'm getting marriage advice from Temple Grandin. And you said, I'm a problem fixer. I like to solve problems. And I've never forgotten that. I'm still happily married, probably thanks to you, Temple.
I didn't. Okay. It's one of the things that Mother has talked about is having time for the siblings. Okay. My sister's a year and a half younger. And the other ones there was a big enough gap in age that I don't think there was much effect. But the one that was a year and a half younger, I was getting the attention and she wasn't getting enough attention. And that there needs to be time for the other siblings to get and do something they want to do.
Are you still close with your siblings, Temple?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but I've been calling up Katie and Izzy and talking about what's going on in New York right now. They live in Manhattan, New York.
Yes. Well, as I said before, we're having your mom on Friday and we're taking questions because later on today, I'm going to go over questions with her. So if you guys have questions for her, be writing those in after the show so we don't confuse them with these. Okay. My son has trouble when we used to go out to stores. He gets overwhelmed. How can I help him? He's 4 years old and he can read. He always wants to play with my hair while we're grocery shopping. How can I help?
Well, I think probably the grocery store's got a lot of noise. Now, one of the things with sensory oversensitivity, one thing that helps is giving the kid some control. Okay, let's start off with going to the store maybe when it's not so busy. But then on the other hand, if he starts to get overwhelmed, maybe he can have a signal. And if he gives that signal, then she'll take him out. In other words, giving him the control. See, this is the same thing as the kid doesn't like the vacuum cleaner, you let the kid turn the vacuum cleaner on. Or the kid doesn't like buzzer on the scoreboard in the gym and you go down there when nobody's there and you turn the thing on where the kid controls it. Or you can have your headphone, you got it with you, but you want to try not to wear it. In other words, but it's with you. Again, yes. That gives you control. And then gradually you'll get to where you can tolerate more and more supermarket. But because some of these things can be desensitized. I remember mother saying in one of her talks, she said, well, I got upset about some cannons that went off at the circus, but she took me back there again anyway, because I kind of liked it. You know, you don't want to shove them into these things. And one thing she did do, we did not have noisemakers at my birthday party. That was an accommodation. But you take the dreaded thing that makes the noise. And if there's a situation where the kid can control that thing, because what it is an excessive startle response. You know, like I'll be in the airport and somebody opens one of the doors wrong and it makes that horrible noise. I flinch now, but I tolerate it. But you give them some sense of control, and then I'll gradually try to do more. And then maybe if he stays in the store a certain length of time, he can buy some little thing in there. So there's then a reward for tolerating the grocery store.
Okay, this is interesting. Somebody wants to know, do you still believe that at least one of the parents of an autistic kid is autistic or has traits of autism?
Oh, autism is a truly, truly continuous trait. And I see autistic traits in parents all the time. But it's a true continuous trait. You see, a brain can be more thinking or a brain can be more social emotional. What point do you slap a label on it? There's also a link genetically with intelligence and some autistic traits, because to be really social eats up a lot of processor space in the brain. So where do you allocate it? But everything I've been reading now about genetics shows truly a continuous trait. You know, there is no black and white dividing line between, okay, computer nerd and autism. In fact, the names are the same thing in a lot of cases. And then, of course, you get down where the kid remains nonverbal. Yes, that's definitely, he's definitely got a disability there.
So then, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is it that because we think of autism as being this spectrum, so do you feel like everybody is somewhere on that spectrum?
Well, probably not, because I think it's basically sort of a spectrum between them being more of a thinking brain or being more of a social brain. It's just how you allocate the resources in the brain. You got some people who are super yakety-yaks, probably don't have any of the traits or barely would have them.
Interesting.
It's a truly continuous trait. Because it takes social stuff, takes a lot of processor power.
I've never really thought about it that way before, and that's very illuminating. How can children of any age with autism learn the benefits of having siblings?
Well, let's do activities together. We did some good activities. We used to go skating together. We go out on the hill and take turns using the sled. Again, this is teaching turn taking. I talked to one family, and every weekend they do an outing. The autistic kid liked roller skating, I think it was. Well, the siblings then going to get choice to maybe do something different on another one of the weekends. You know, so if there's 3 kids, then he gets to pick roller skating every 3rd weekend. But we don't go roller skating every weekend. Maybe you don't like skateboarding, but then you're going to have to sit and watch it. You know, because you've got to take turns picking out the movies. I've talked about what to do in the Locked Up in the House. Well, watch the International Space Station, living on the International Space Station, tight quarters.
Yes.
The floor of the bathroom. It's not that fun.
You got me hooked now on there, because there's a website, you guys, where you can go and it's Life on the International Space Station, and they have videos that are just for kids, but they're great for everyone. And you got me hooked on it because you were describing for me the one where they were making the peanut butter sandwich. But they have all these different videos that you can watch, and then they have lesson plans that go with it too. But I like this idea that you had when we spoke to you last about it, this being in close quarters. It's just like being on the space station, and that they have to make parts of their day where they do different things. Like you emphasize that they have to have part of the day where they get to be alone.
They have to be alone, and they have a very big exercise requirement, like about 2 hours a day of exercise, so they don't, it's really bad for their health being weightless all the time. Over the years, they've collected some musical instruments and things. They have time to do hobbies. But one thing they have, and I've actually got sent a schedule of the astronaut schedule on the space station. They have what's called the midday meal, where everybody is going to eat together, and that's scheduled. And And then they have times they got to work on their experiments. They have time where they can get on the internet. I mean, the space station's going round and round, so it's going to be going in and out of service. And they're going to know just exactly when those points are in the orbit. That's the time to do a video call real fast. Just like cell phones go in and out of service on the road, space station's going to go in and out of service as it goes around.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Somebody says, thank you for being a role model for my daughter. She stopped violin practice today to watch this. She said that she is a lot like you were when you were little. Is it ever hard for you, Temple, that you are such a role model, especially to everybody, but especially to girls on the spectrum? Do you ever feel like you have a lot to live up to?
Well, I feel it's a responsibility. I've had people ask that. I've always got to behave myself. It's a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to take that responsibility really seriously.
Absolutely. They're wanting to know what you're enjoying in your free time right now. Like, what's your favorite free time thing to do?
Well, I've watched some of the episodes of the new Jean-Luc Picard Star Trek show. Now they're just getting involved with the Borg right now. I've always been a Star Trek fan. Also love to read my science magazines and business magazines. I was reading those this morning, read a really sad story about the flower industry. Since all the weddings are canceled, they've just had to destroy all the flowers. It was the saddest thing. And I read that this morning in Business Week, and very sad.
It's so interesting how interconnected so many things are. And when you pull, a rather large thing out, like people going out in public, I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't thought about the flower industry and those poor people who make their living, because I'm sure that their sales have just gone right through the floor.
Well, they had to chop them up and take them to the dump, is what or to the compost pile. Really, really sad. And then other things in supply chain, meat plants getting infected, warehouses getting infected. Some places do a better job of controlling it than others. And one of the things that's been a very effective method for like places where you have people grouped together on not getting sick is if you're sick, they pay you not to come to work.
Yes.
That will drastically reduce the infection rate of some of these really important things that we have in the supply chain.
Yeah, I've been watching as they've been showing that some of these meat packing plants are closing, and with the one where they said they'd had over 600 people diagnosed positive with COVID.
And I'm in that industry, I can't mention any names, I'm not gonna mention any names, but basically I have been watching the figures on meat plants, also on all the supply chain things. I've been looking up the figures. And what I have found is when you pay people to stay home when they're sick, that will drastically reduce the infection rate.
There you go.
In these super critical things in supply chain. And then things like the poor flower industry, which was definitely considered the saddest thing. They had to throw away their entire crop, lay their people off. Really, really sad.
Well, and of course, we're seeing that the pictures that they were showing of the farmers having to dump all their produce too.
Terrible.
And tow it under. Horrible. Because there are, we know that there are going to be some shortages in people who can't are pressed.
Well, let me just explain a few things about that. Horrible. I saw the pictures of milk tankers dumping in a field. I saw that. Vegetable crops being plowed under. I've seen all of that. Okay, what happened? Let me just explain some things about supply chains. So I am in the food industry. Where the restaurants shut down, then there's a huge amount of milk that they no longer need. And a lot of that went to restaurants. And the way the supply chains work is you have giant warehouses. Okay, imagine Amazon, but it's food. It's food, all food. Big, huge, gigantic warehouse for food. I've been in it.
Yeah.
I've been in the biggest one there is that distributes to what they call food service and institutional. In other words, that goes to cafeterias, it goes to restaurants. So that supply chain is set up, and I've got a no name policy on this.
Sure, absolutely.
You'll see their trucks. They have big trucks that bring the stuff into supermarkets, bring it into restaurants. So when the restaurant business fell, okay, now this supply chain set up to bring truckloads in to the back side of restaurants of supplies. Now, in order to, now the soup kitchens were screaming for food right now at this point.
Yes.
And so they really, really needed it. So we'd have to figure out some way to get that big distribution warehouse for the food service, we need to make, like pandemic planning now. Now, unfortunately, we've learned this the hard way, so that they can then divert that to food kitchens. Now, the problem you've got with the milk is that's unpasteurized product. You can't just sell that unless you want to get brucellosis and tuberculosis. I don't think you want that. That's the reason why you pasteurize milk. And if you want to drink raw milk, you better have a dairy that's very super good biosecurity. So you can't keep those diseases out. But you see, then what happened when that supply chain shut down, then the milk processing plant couldn't process the milk. See, that's the problem that happened. And so let's say we have something happen again when restaurants are shut down, then you're going to immediately have to have another supply chain where that truck, instead of going to the back ends of restaurants, is going to go to the back end of the food kitchen.
Yeah.
But the supply chains weren't set up, and so the system just jammed. There was a learning thing there. No, I thought it was horrible. I saw that. Terrible.
Just, yes, absolutely horrible. I don't know, here in Los Angeles, what they did was, because we have a huge school program through LAUSD where a lot of kids get fed through the schools. And when the schools closed, what they did was they took that entire operation and began feeding anyone. That if anybody is hungry, there's 2 times a day where they can go to all these schools all over LAUSD and they can eat, which
you set up those supply chains.
Yep.
Then the big food service warehouse, gigantic warehouse, then just puts it into that supply chain.
Yeah.
You see, what happened is the thing cut off. Okay, the cows are going to still keep milking.
Yeah.
And then to figure out what we need to be doing for emergency planning now is figuring out how to divert that supply chain. But it took a while for the schools to figure out that they need to.
We need you in charge of the food chain. That's what we need. I see
it.
I know you see it.
I've been in all these places. I know how these supply chains work. I've been in these big food distribution warehouses. I've been there.
Well, I remember when the whole thing happened with the nuclear power plant in Japan. And I heard an interview with you right afterwards, and you said, if an autistic person had designed that nuclear power plant, it would never have been flooded. You said you took one look at it and at the plans, and that you could tell why the water came in. And I remember thinking, why don't we should have somebody who has the way that you think on every single team so that we can see around.
Well, that's why you need the different kinds of minds. You see, what I've learned about the mathematical mind, they calculate risk. They didn't see the water filling up the basement and drowning the electric pump that cools it. And when I was young, I used to say they were stupid. It's not stupidity. The mathematical mind just doesn't see the water filling up the basement. I see the water flooding the site, the doors bust open because they're not going to be able to withstand that water pressure. And 2 seconds later, the basement's flooded and the equipment's drowned, and the generators that run it are drowned.
Yes. Well, that's why you're right. That's why we need all the different kinds of minds. And now I'm going to ask you to tell us about your book, The Autistic Brain. Okay. Do you have that one sitting there?
No, I actually don't have that one sitting there, but I could probably run and grab it real quick. Want me to do that?
No.
Okay.
We'd rather have you.
Okay.
Let's just talk about the book, because they can get it right now from Future Horizons. But what will they find in that book?
Well, actually, last time I looked, the Autistic Brain was available in the Amazon warehouse. I just checked that. But so you can get it there, I think, too. Ebooks, all your ebooks, they're all at Amazon. Audiobooks, there's no problem with ebook and audiobook supply chain. It's only physical books. But the main thing I talk about in the Autistic Brain is the different kinds of thinking. I'm a visual thinker. That was shown in the HBO movie, what's called an object visualizer, if you want the sign term, object visualizer. And then another kind of thinker is what's called the visual spatial. This is your mathematical mind. This is your pattern thinker. This is going to be a computer programmer. You're a more traditional kind of engineer. Then you have the word thinkers. Now, when I was young, I thought everybody was a visual thinker like me. Mm-hmm. Well, I've learned that that's definitely not the case. Now, the things that visual thinkers are good at are art, design, but also high-end skilled trades. When I look back at the projects I did with some of the very large meat companies, I'm going to estimate that 20%, the welders, the designers I worked with were either dyslexic, autistic, or ADHD. I know 2 people that I'm almost positive are autistic, own large metal fabrication companies. Now they're retiring. They're not getting replaced. We're losing skills. We don't make elevators anymore. Check out the new hotels. Well, now hotels are getting repurposed, to quarantine people in. But when you look at who designs different stuff in a large food factory, any food factory, you have a part of it that I'll call the clever engineering department. That's the super clever packaging machine, all the conveyorized systems. And then you have the more mathematical parts like boilers and refrigeration. Every plant I worked on, I worked for every major meat company. The visual thinkers like me, that often weren't very good students at school, made the real clever equipment. And that's a skill we're losing.
Yeah.
Okay, we were talking about warehouses. There's a lot of conveyors and stuff in warehouses, and it comes from Germany because they've kept skilled trades. Some of our top, what I call the really specialized equipment in the food industry is coming out of Europe now. It used to all come out of here. And I think it goes back to schools taking out the skilled trades and the hands-on activities 20 years ago. We're paying for that now. And this is something that until COVID got on the scene, I really talked about this because we need our visual thinkers. And I just talked to a mom of a kid. Her boy had F's, horrible student, but she was a robotics coach and he could never pass algebra, but she managed to get him into an auto repair shop and learn he's fixing trains now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's another back door. But we need these visual thinkers, and they're getting screened out of the educational system. I am very concerned. And in my book, The Autistic Brain, I give you the science for that. And since that book's been published, there's a whole lot more science on the difference between the object visualizer, if you want to look this up on Google Scholar, and the visual spatial. Those are the scientific words when I talk about the visual thinker and the math thinker.
Wonderful.
That's the main thing in that book. And we need our visual thinkers because things like this horrible thing like dumping the milk. Well, this is the sort of thing visual thinkers can help you solve that because I actually see the supply chain.
Yeah.
Okay, the milk processing plant tanks are full, so they turn away to deliveries. Then they have to dump them. Okay, so you've got to get the whole supply chain working. Then the schools, it took the schools a while to figure out they could be feeding centers. Now we know that. Now we can take those same trucks and instead of delivering to restaurants, they can deliver to schools.
Yeah.
We can just reverse that supply chain. But the problem is a very high volume supply chain. And if you don't make the plans up front, we need to be solving this problem.
Hey, have you ever been to my son does competitive robotics. Have you ever been to one of those robotics tournaments? Where the robots?
I've seen them on TV. And
sometime I got to get you to come with me to one of them. He was supposed to. His robot had his team's robot had won, and they were supposed to go to the championship in Houston, but that was supposed to happen last week, and it all got canceled. But sometime I'm going to tell you where they are so that you can go to one with us. It's so much fun.
Well, but Temple, robotics is the kind of things that can get that kid. See, when you look at the robotics, there's 2 parts of the robot. There's the mechanical engineering part, that's the visual thinking part.
Exactly.
And there's the programming, which is the more mathematical part. I'd work on the mechanical part of the robot.
Exactly, which is what my son does. Temple, I'm realizing we're past the hour mark. Now we are going to continue on with the show, and you're welcome to stay with us if you want to stay. There are more questions.
I can stay for another 10 minutes, and then I'm going to have to go.
Okay, great. So another question here. My son does not speak and was diagnosed with autism when he was 1.8 years. He's now 5.5 years. What can we do to make him speak? We feel that he understands, takes us to what he wants, points finger, murmurs, some voices, kind words, but doesn't speak. What can be done? Please
doesn't
advise.
Speak at all.
At all.
Okay. Well, there's kids that can't speak. He's got to have a way to communication. There's the various electronic devices, picture boards, picture exchange. Some people are using sign language, but we got to give them a way to communicate. And then if a kid has any speech at all, You always want to encourage him to use his words. Let's say he wants a juice. You say, use your words, but you got to give them time to respond. These kids are like a slow internet connection. They take time to respond. And then there's some that are not going to talk. Some of these kids can just learn to type with something as simple as a text messaging program on an iPad. I think the phones are too small for kids, but you could just use a tablet computer with a text messaging and put it in airplane mode so they can't send anything. And some can just learn to type on that.
Absolutely.
And that's what Carly, there's another book written by a nonverbal named Carly's Voice. It's another book, Carly's Voice.
Carly Fleischman, yes.
Carly Fleischman. And she just learned, she types very slowly, but she types independently. That a text messaging program, that's something that costs nothing. But I would recommend a larger device than a phone.
Yeah, Carly, for those of you who don't know, Carly, when she was very young, they didn't think she even understood the alphabet. She didn't understand the concept of one as far as they were concerned. And when she was 13 years old, she took a computer from one of her caregivers. And this is like having never communicated in any way. She typed out, "My teeth hurt, please help me." So she clearly had been understanding some things and just didn't have a way to communicate. And then, of course, they gave her a keyboard, and she's brilliant. Brilliant. She's the one who interviewed Channing Tatum a while back, you guys.
That's the thing that some of these kids can learn how to type. And same thing with Tito. Now, he types very fast, and then he gets up and he runs around and flaps, and then he has to rest a little bit, because it takes tremendous, both Carly and Tito talk about tremendous effort is required to concentrate to do their typing.
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about friendship. We have a lot of people writing in about friendships and relationships. Somebody says, I have a 17-year-old that doesn't have friends outside of school or sports. Not sure what to do. What advice do you have? And other people asking if you would tell a little bit about what friendships have been like for you and have meant for you in your lifetime.
Well, when I was in high school, I got a lot of bullying and teasing, where I had friends who shared interests. And they were horses, model rockets, and electronics. And to get friends outside of school, let's get involved in something where there's a shared interest. One innovative teacher started a Star Wars club in her school. And for the autistic kid, friends who shared interests, find stuff that you like to do together with other people. A lot of my friends, they're in the autism field, they're in animal behavior. They were construction people. We used to love to just sit around and talk about how to build stuff. We also like to talk about how stupid the suits were too.
So similar interests.
Yeah, similar interests.
Wonderful. I think we talked about this last time, that there was a great study years ago that came out of Santa Barbara talking about bullying, and that that when you have friends, you're more bully proof. And that one thing that a parent can do is facilitate a club at your child's school that's something that they're interested in. So if they're interested in a particular video game, that make a club about that. And or if they're, and that then they make friends. Yeah. I don't know if you know the Peers program, Temple. There's a great program out of UCLA that's called the Peers program. And it's simultaneous tracks where the parents are taking a track on how to support their kid being friends and social, so that it helps them to realize when they're making a mistake. And then the kids are taking a track at the same time. And it's really brilliant. I absolutely love it. And they're offering right now to do that online with you and with your kiddos. So that's at UCLA. So check that out. The Temple, can you tell me about equine therapy and autism? This is Carrie asking.
Well, there's some individuals that really respond well to equine therapy. And I find that how do autistic kids respond to animals, there's 3 different ways. Love them, a little scared at first, then love them, and then maybe not appropriate. And that's usually sensory. You can't control when a horse might whinny, for example, where I can control maybe when a vacuum cleaner is turned on. But there's parents that have said, my kid did their first words on a horse. Now, I realize that's just anecdotal data, but I've probably heard that 7 or 8 or 9 times now. And one of the things we need to figure out is what subgroup responds that way. In the horse, you have balancing and you have rhythm. And those are 2 activities that stimulate the cerebellum which is involved with timing stuff throughout the brain. There's a lot still not understood about the cerebellum. And that may have something to do with it. But for some kids, it's just the best thing you can do. But again, one size doesn't fit everybody. And right now they're building a new equine center. They did break ground on it recently. One of the things I'd like to find out is what kind of a subgroup responds that super well where you're getting that speech. I've heard that anecdotally enough times. You can't just poo-poo that off. Something's happening there, and we need to find out what kind of kid that works with.
Well, there's something about animals. I know you're a big animal lover. That's been the large portion of your life has been devoted towards animals. But I feel like it's similar to how I feel about the autism community. Animals don't lie.
No,
they're just exactly who they are, and they tell the truth 100% of the time, which is what I feel about individuals that I've met on the autism spectrum.
well, and I've talked to one mom of an autistic kid. She says, my autistic son, he was nonverbal. She says he's best buds with a dog. I don't know. They're just like on the same wavelength. You see, that has nothing to do with speech. Well, you see, an animal's world is not verbal. And when you look at some of the research now, people are still fighting over animal consciousness. I've been following some of that literature. And I read a paper that an engineer wrote. They don't deny animals' consciousness. But then you write something from the psych department, well, highly verbal. I start looking at author affiliations. And I'm finding that papers written in highly verbal fields don't have a hard time believing that animals are conscious the same way we are. And I think it has to do with verbal. This is actually being debated right now.
I know.
I just downloaded a paper just the other night that an engineer had written, and he says, oh, dogs are conscious. But I think it gets down to how big of a pedestal you put verbal thinking on. And I've discussed this as a visual thinker, but I don't think you have to be a verbal thinker to be conscious. And to me, just looking at some dogs yesterday, to say that this red dog is not conscious is just ridiculous. And I think it gets down to how verbal the person is, because this is being seriously discussed right now in scientific literature.
I know, and it baffles me. I don't understand how an intelligent person who has been around dogs or horses or cattle can think that they don't think or that they don't.
See, this is where I'm a total visual thinker, but you're taking somebody who's super, super verbal. And I've talked to some where they don't have any visual thought at all. Maybe they have a hard time imagining a dog is conscious, because a dog lives in a sensory-based world, not a verbal world.
Yeah, but
it's being seriously discussed now.
I know. I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
Scientific journals.
I know. I don't understand it. Okay. Everybody's saying just how cool it is to have you here on the show, and they say, I love the good doctor. One person is writing, wants you to know that it's going to be 15 years in September that they were diagnosed with Asperger's at the age of 24. They want to know, have you seen the show, The Good Doctor?
Oh, yes, I have. Yeah. Yes, I do.
And what, do you like it?
Well, I think in some things he could maybe learn a little more quickly. I mean, I learned I couldn't call people stupid at a project meeting after I got some counseling from plant engineer and some other people.
Yeah. I had mentioned that on Thursday, we're having Coby Bird on the show. He's that 17-year-old actor. He was on The Good Doctor. And he's now on a show on Netflix. It's a hit show called Locke and Key. Temple, have you seen that show yet?
I have not seen that show.
I got to tell you, I think, because we like a lot of the same things. I like Picard. I like Star Trek. I got to tell you, I think that you will like this. It's a very fun show. It's called Locke and Key.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
And Coby plays the character of Rufus on it. And it's based on graphic novels that were written by the son of Stephen King. Did you ever like any of the Stephen King stuff?
Yeah, I've read a lot of Stephen King stuff. Yeah.
Now, sometimes that's too much for me, but this is written by his son and has a huge following, but I think that you will super enjoy it. I would love to hear your opinion of that later on.
Well, I'll have to show up. And okay, you have another question there, quick?
Okay, what are your thoughts on authentic, and this goes right along with it, authentic representation in entertainment? So when you see someone in a show, let's say I'm Picard and they're playing somebody who's deaf, do you feel like that should be first considered someone who is actually deaf playing that role? And when you see characters on screen playing autism, like for instance, Dustin Hoffman in Rayman, he played a character and he was acting. He was playing somebody who was on the spectrum. When Claire Danes played you, she was not an autistic actor. How do you feel about people who are on the spectrum playing people who are on the spectrum?
Well, I like to see people on the spectrum play in shows, but I'm not gonna, I'm more in the middle of the road on a lot of these issues. And Claire Danes, I thought she did a great job. She like channeled me. She became me. And I've actually counseled Dustin Hoffman. He looked at Joe Sullivan to see what autism looks like. And I talked to him about the sensory issues and the anxiety issues. And I remember I said, Dustin, imagine how anxious you were when you went to your first big audition. Now just imagine if you had those kind of nerves all the time for no reason. This was stuff that I told him. And yes, I'd like to see people that have a specific diagnosis or whatever, be in these shows. But on the other hand, I'm not going to say never do a Claire Danes or a Dustin Hoffman. I'm going to be more middle of the road.
Well, I'm with you right there because I want to see those individuals get the first opportunity. I want to see them have the opportunity for the employment and all of that and authentic representation. But I also want to leave room for someone who's on the spectrum to be able to play someone who's not on the spectrum. And I think once we say, oh, if it's the characters on the spectrum, it has to be played by somebody on the spectrum, then we're also going to be saying that people who a character is not on the spectrum cannot be played by someone on the spectrum. And I never want to see that.
Well, the other problem you got with the movie industry is they want to put a star in the leading role.
Yeah,
that's something they're going to want to do. So it's going to be a lot easier to bring them into a supporting role.
Yes,
the movie industry wants to put a star in the leading roles. Now, there's some situations where they put a non-star in, but no, I'm going to be more flexible. I sort of like the same thing we talk about, being in a regular classroom or a special school. I want to see kids as much as possible in a regular classroom. I will tell you something I don't want to see. I don't want to see a 12-year-old fully verbal that ought to be maybe in a gifted program in a class with people that don't talk and have problems dressing. Yeah, that's not okay because that kid's not going to go anywhere. But I want to do inclusion just as much as we practically can do it.
Yes.
But then I don't want something, I visualize things I don't want. He's sitting in the back of the regular classroom, just doing stems and not learning anything. That's no, but you see, I see specific examples of scenarios that I would consider not acceptable.
Yeah. Well, Temple, I've kept you way longer than I said that I was going to keep you. And I know that you've got other things to do today, but can I just tell you how much we appreciate you and how much we adore you and how much we really, how meaningful it is to get to spend this time with you. It's just so wonderful.
Really good to be here. And thank you so much.
All right. And let's go to a robotics tournament. Let's go back to Houston to a robotics tournament.
I think
and we'll see NASA again.
I'd like to do that. Okay, great.
All right.
I think I'm going to keep the meeting now. Okay.
Thank you. Bye, Temple.
Bye.
The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. It's Wednesday, so you can see that next to me, I have Dr. Doreen Grandin. What a thrill it is to have her here for Ask Dr. Doreen. And you look beautiful in your blue this morning. So thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much.
You know, in this format, it's kind of hysterical. And we sort of have chosen, a couple of times we did it like, you know, and it just sort of happened and we weren't sure what was happening, where you could see us as we were going through the opener. And then, I don't know, I just sort of like it. It feels like that, you know, sometimes on Saturday Night Live, they play just a couple of seconds of the person saying before, we're getting ready to go live. I sort of like that. So, and many of you have written in and said that you like it. I do a little dance when they play the song, and I do that all the time. So anyway, we hope that you enjoy that. Sometimes it's us going, what's happening? Because we don't, you know, there's all the ways that we get live here. But thrilled to be here with you. We're coming to you live from many locations. I'm at home, Dr. Grandin is at home, and our producer is at home. That social distancing thing that we're all doing. But we're really excited. This is a big week at Autism Live, and I love that Dr. Grandin is at the center of all of it. And it's a wonderful opportunity for you to get your questions answered by her, because she is this amazing, I believe, the preeminent expert in the field of autism. And she's a visionary. I've known her for many years now, and I do believe that she has the ability to see around corners. And in this era, like, you know, how incredible to have somebody who can see sort of ahead. Although nobody knew this, right? None of us could see this. But thrilled that she is here and she's going to be answering your questions. We do give the disclaimer that there is no expert in any field that could give individual specific advice in this format. So please write in details, as many details as possible. And then what we will do is take a tour of Dr. Grandin's lovely, beautiful mind, and she will tell us what she knows on that subject. But then you need to take that information and go back to the expert who has eyes on the situation to be able to figure out what to do next. But we know, because you guys have written in and told us, that it helps to have a wider understanding of, you know, maybe even what question to ask next, right? So this show is live. We are live right now on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, and Periscope. And we are live on our homepage, autism-live.com. We hope that you will check us out there. I know yesterday, Dr. Grandin, we had Dr. Grandin on, and Facebook was not our friend. And we could not get the show up live on Facebook. So many of you, and we were posting everywhere saying, come over and watch us on YouTube. We did rebroadcast later on in the day on Facebook. But, you know, it's like this internet that we are all leaning into. Sometimes there are just 8 more people than can fit on the boat, and then they start kicking off things. It just, who knew that the internet had a limit? But apparently it does. So in any case, I said to Dr. Grandin, I said, well, we broke Facebook. But we were able to get it later on in the day. So if you missed it, you guys check it out there. But we're on Facebook today, and I'm really excited about that. So, and by the way, we podcast to so many different places, and love for you guys to watch us on iTunes. It's a free download. You can do it with just the sound if you want to take us for a walk, or, you know, get on your elliptical and listen to us, or you can get the picture and sound. We're also on iHeartRadio, on Deezer. What else? Traven's got it all right there. I always forget Spotify. I don't know why Spotify. It's not that I don't have love for Spotify. I do, but I forget, because it's so cool that we're on Spotify. But don't forget, autism-live.com, and you can write in on the bottom. I'm going to show you, I'm going to sneak and show you that I have an iPad right here that shows me when you guys write in on the live feature. So don't be afraid to write in on the live feature. It's free, it's anonymous, and I can see when you guys write in. So, Dr. Grandin, welcome. Are we ready to take some questions?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so sorry that I also missed your show with Temple Grandin yesterday. I would have loved to see that, but I heard that it was a wonderful show anyway. So
thank you. It was.
And
it's available.
Let you down, that's okay. You know,
I'm sorry, what?
I said, even if Facebook let you down, it's okay. I have to tell you though, Shannon, we also had a lot of different kind of internet related issues yesterday. So I think yesterday something was going on. Our whole area went dark for a while.
Wow. Wow. And I'm sorry, that was my audio because I didn't realize that I had our website up in another place. So all of a sudden we had us playing twice. That was me, my bad, my technical bad. I do that all the time because I'll be checking comments and I forget that it'll start streaming. But I do want to tell people you can still go back and watch that Temple Grandin. And of course, we're here live today. Tomorrow, Coby Bird from that hit show Locke and Key is with us. And then on Friday, we have Temple Grandin's mom. Eustacia Cutler is going to be here. And I know like we're going to try not to break the internet again. But you know, if we do, we do. All right. But so thrilled that Dr. Grandin is here with us because I just want to say that she is one of the most remarkable people that I have ever had the opportunity to know in my life. And, you know, we all know that I love the Center for Autism and Related Disorders card because they gave me back my child. And I don't know how else to put that. And I know that there are a lot of people who don't understand what that means, but there are many people who are watching who do. And I just want to say that it's because of this woman that how many years ago did you decide that you were going to devote your life to autism and to help people? It's way more many years than anybody would believe. It's 40 years ago, is it not?
Yeah, it's actually 42 years ago. First of all, thank you so much, Shannon. You're always very kind to me and you say the nicest things. I really appreciate that. But yeah, I got involved in the field 42 years ago. And of course, then 12 years later, opened CARD, which means it's CARD's 30th this year.
Which is amazing. And, you know, I've been there at CARD at first as a mother of a client, and now, you know, working with CARD because I believe so much in the mission of what they do. And because I believe so much in the mission that this woman started us all on. So I just want to say thank you to her. And every day that I spend with my child and he crests another hurdle, you know, I literally had a moment yesterday where I was just like gloom and doom. And I was like, you know, this is just terrible. This socialization is just absolutely horrible because my son is supposed to be taking the SATs and this is the semester in which he gets ready and writes his college essay. And how could, and I went, oh my gosh, like get your gratitude on, girl. There, you know, a good solid 14 years ago, I sat in a doctor's office and cried and thought, my child will never be able to say, I love you, mom. How about if I just like grab a whoopee and go, yes, this is difficult because he's not taking the SATs. How lucky am I? But it's because of this woman and the vision that she had and the fact that she taught that to other people. So I just wanted to say that. All right.
Very nice. Can I just say that I just saw a video clip that you had made with your wonderful son, and it brought me to tears. Every couple of years when I see him, or every year or so when I see him, it just amazes me. He's just developed into such a beautiful, lovely human being, so sharp and smart, and yet kind and empathetic, and just like, oh, I love the boy. It's amazing.
Well, let me just say to you that your handprint is on his heart.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, now I have to mop down. Okay, and he's a wonderful person, but your handprint is on his heart. Okay. But we want to be able to help all of you to get to what you need, because I do feel incredibly lucky, but that's, you know, we want to help you. So we're going to move on to questions. We've had a mom writing to us the last couple of days, and I don't know if this is on your list because I sent you new questions just a little while ago. We were chatting earlier this morning that she is looking for help with her 6-year-old daughter that she's trying to potty train. She said that she felt that she had tried everything. And I wrote back to her, Dr. Grandin, and I said, are you familiar with the Fox and Azrin method? And she said, no, I've never heard of it. And of course, you know, I wanted to leap through my phone to hug her because I know that sometimes as a parent, we feel like I have literally tried everything. But I was saying to her, you literally have tried everything except the one thing known to work, the Fox and Azrin method. But she did write back in and say to me, I've tried repeatedly taking her to the potty. This is a 6-year-old. She refuses to go in the toilet. She will hold it until she has a pull-up on. And she said, would you please talk about this on the air? And I said, we will do our level best. So here you go, Dr. Grandin. What can you do to help this mom who's at her wit's end?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, deep breath, and I don't want you to get involved with something that is going to take a few days when you're at this level of stress. Like, I really just kind of would suggest that you just let it go for a few days. Don't worry about it at all. And let's direct you to a few places that you can read up and learn more about the Fox and Azurin procedure. We also have several shows where we've talked about this, and I believe a pretty in-depth training that Dr. Sienna Greener-Wooten did for us on Autism Live. So I'm sure Shannon will refer you to those. But let me just back up real quick and say, we often try to do things with our kids the way that we would do it with any other child or a typical child, and it doesn't work. And then we become very frustrated. And don't get frustrated. It's really just a matter of following a different set of procedures. And it's kind of, think about it as a different language, where once you start talking the right language, your child will actually get it and it will work. So with potty training, it's a pretty sensitive subject. And the more you push and the more you become kind of combative with your child, it takes longer. And your child will become a little bit more defensive and it'll become harder to do. So back off a little bit from whatever you've been doing and just let her have the pull-ups for a little bit. Now, I do want to say that we actually published research several years ago, I don't remember when now, but that showed that pull-ups themselves prolong the potty training procedure. So when a child is going back and forth between pull-ups, it becomes a little bit more confusing. Just having a pull-up or a diaper or something on gives the child a signal that it's okay to go ahead and pee in their pull-ups. So when you start the procedure, you'll go through a whole different series of steps. But I'll very, very quickly tell you kind of how this works. You'll need a few days and you'll need help. So you'll need friends or people who can come in and help you, because the procedure is not one where you can practice it for an hour and stop. It's pretty much the whole day for about 3 days. And you'll need people to come in and like help you take shifts, right? And you will make a bathroom, you'll take a bathroom and make it a wonderful, wonderful place to be. You can put a TV in there if you can, or a laptop or a computer, or lots of fun stuff. And your child actually will be running around. So it's good that, I don't know where in the country you are, but hopefully now we're heading into the summer and weather starts to get better, because you will not be wearing underwear or pull-ups. Your child, I mean, will not be wearing anything and will be essentially in spending most of the day in the bathroom. And it's kind of a reverse schedule where you start by being on the toilet for a period of time. The child is on the toilet for a period of time, and hopefully they will void. And once they void, a lot of reinforcer and a little bit of free time. And then they go back on. So you start with much more time on the potty than off the potty. And during the course of the day or 2 days, you gradually reverse that, so that eventually by the end of the second day or third day, you get to where you are on a 15-minute go to the bathroom schedule, or maybe even a 30-minute go to the bathroom schedule if that's possible. But in order to make it successful, you'll do a little bit of prep, where you'll be giving your child a lot to drink and some salty foods the day before, so that they actually want to drink. Now, all of this type of detail is in the Fox and Azurin protocol. So instead of just kind of jumping around here, I will refer you to some of the shows where we've gone through great detail on this. And I really tell you, it is very successful. Please don't be discouraged. Stop, take a breath right now, read the procedure, watch the videos, and then when you start back up, make sure you have some friends or people who can help you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Granpeesheh. And I just want to say, we did a video right before all of this COVID stuff. We went into the studio and we did a couple of videos, one on feeding, one on sleep, and one on the Fox-Nazareth method for potty training with Cecilia Knight and Jen Yakos. And we are getting ready to release those videos. It'll probably be next week. And it's intensive, explaining what the Fox-Nazareth thing is. It's the two of them, and I sit with them, and occasionally I say something funny because what do I know? But it was very fun filming with them. They're two incredible people, and we should have that out to you guys next week. But there are tons of videos right now. Autism-live.com. Go there, check those out. Just put in potty training, and a bunch of things will come up, including that one with Dr. Sienna Greener-Wooten. Hey, I'm going to come to a question in a few minutes from somebody who's been writing in under the name Love Life. And I just want to give you a chance to answer before we get to your question. I want to know, because I know Dr. Granpeesheh is going to want to know, is your child making any sounds, making any vocal productions, so that we can get to that. I also want to say that we have one mom who watches the show and interacts with us, Dr. Granpeesheh, who always says this is her Netflix. This is what she's doing during this. And she says, and when we started the show, she said, let's party. And we're thrilled that you're here with us. We're also saying hello to Swathi, who's watching, the mom of Siri. She says, hi, Dr. Doreen and Shannon. We're glad to have you here. We love her, and we love Siri, and I love the jewelry that Siri makes with her designs. But bless her heart, Mary was watching the opening, and I think she must be a new viewer, and she said, what is CARD? And Mary, like, hello and welcome. I'm excited for you to be here. CARD stands for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. If you haven't already, go to www.centerforautism.com and check out the wonderland that is CARD. These are the people who saved my bacon and saved my boy. And this is the place that Dr. Granpeesheh created 30 years ago, centerforautism.com. She can tell you all the wonderful things about it, but I can tell you that those of us who have kids who've gone through the program or are in the program, we have this phrase that we say, CARD, it's where miracles happen. So there you have it. And I got my miracle there, and they are all over the United States. So check them out. Centerforautism.com. They are still doing therapy right now. And they are still doing intakes right now. So, you know, have yourself some.
Thank you. Sorry, Shannon. And Mary, we do applied behavior analysis. We do ABA, and we have clinics, as Shannon said, all over the country. And we have about, 360 or so behavior analysts, BCBAs, and who are supervisors, and somewhere around 6,000 or so behavior technicians or therapists who come to the homes and also do telehealth therapy. And when COVID-19 is over, we will also go back to providing services in our centers. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you, Mary.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Okay, I have a couple of questions that I promised that I would get to, and then I'm going to come back to this love life, but tell me if your child is able to make sounds or say any words. Someone specifically asked, my son, 21 years old, was diagnosed also with Tourette's. And when he plays video games, he uses bad language and talks very loud. We don't use bad language, she says. And he seems not to even be aware of what he is saying. What do you recommend we do?
Yeah. So this is, I don't know if, I can't tell from the email if the bad language he uses is due to the Tourette's, which obviously Tourette's, that's one of the symptoms of Tourette's, or if it is simply that the environment of the video game has bad language in it. So it could be either one, because, and also please remember that with Tourette's, anything that is high speed or high stress, or just basically a kind of an anxiety provoking activity can increase the utterances of profanity. And so, because a lot of those come out in stress. So if you see that essentially it's just like a very high level anxious type of video game, and that is increasing the effect of the Tourette's, you essentially have two options. You can either change the games and not allow those types of games that are high intensity, or you can talk to his physician and figure out what you can do from a medication perspective to help control this a little bit better. Now, if it's just that the actual activity on the video itself is uses bad language, and or sometimes there are other kids, other individuals or adults, I should say, on these programs when you're playing. A lot of times nowadays, the video games are multiple people talking to each other. And if that's where the bad language is occurring, he could be modeling, which basically makes it very important for him to not be involved with that type of game or that type of audience. So you kind of need to figure out what is the cause of it. Is it just, the Tourette's acting up due to stress, or is it the environment and the people and the video game itself? Either way, you can replace this activity with something else, but you just need to make sure that the other thing that you bring in is as rewarding to your son, and then it should be able to do.
Yes, and I have to admit that, I appreciate that you don't use foul language, but I'm going to admit that it is my favorite hobby. That I can swear 3 Russian sailors underneath the table. I do enjoy a good swear word, and I know, judge me, feel free to do that. And my son is about to be 17 years old, and he plays those video games, and they all do. It is almost like it is their way of banging on drums.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say to you that the environment is there, and what we have done is cultivated and said to him, because what am I going to say to him? Because I use those words and he hears me using those words. And what I've said to him is, but I don't use them in certain circumstances. Like, I'm obviously not here with all of you and dropping F-bombs. Like, that would be inappropriate. And so we've sort of taken that tack with it. But I got to tell you, on those video games, it is all about that. Okay, I sort of feel like Sophie's Choice, because we have all these questions coming in all different ways and I have to pick and choose. But I do appreciate that somebody wrote in on the live feature and said, hi, Shannon, I have a question for Dr. Doreen. Hope she will answer on today's live Q&A. My son is 3 years old. He has been diagnosed with autism in December of 2019 when he was 2 years and 9 months. We started ABA in February. My question to Dr. Doreen is, when do you know that ABA is working? I'm a desperate mom who wants my son to start communicating verbally. His ABA provider provides natural environment training, not DTT. This really bugs me since day one. She writes, is this the right choice for our son? And she says she is in Texas. And this is something that you can tell already that I'm heated about this, because this is this thing that I feel like a bunch of BCBAs came out of school in the last couple of years and decided that only doing natural environment training, because they thought the parents would like it better, and they didn't want to have to explain DTT to parents. Because when we look at DTT as parents, we go, what is that weird thing? So these BCBAs decided that maybe they would just do natural environment, and I want to get them all in a room, and I want to take them all out behind the barn and say, where is your science? You're supposed to be science people. That you got to have both of these things, don't you, Dr. Grandpichet? It makes me mad.
Yeah, in fact, I just wrote that. You just gave me an idea, because I think I should talk to our clinical team, who's really underwater right now, and ask them to either do a literature review or actually do a comparison of the speed of acquisition between DTT and NET. So I just want to talk about that a little bit. NET stands for Natural Environment Training. DTT stands for Discrete Trial Training. And they're both types of ABA. So that's important to note. Discrete trial training is a very structured procedure where you gain the attention of the child, and then you teach the child in these things that we call discrete trials that are separated from each other discretely. A trial consists of an SD, which is a discriminative stimulus, or think of that as an antecedent, a signal, an instruction, the behavior, so discrete, the SD, the behavior, and then an SR, or a consequence. So that is a trial. So essentially, I, for instance, would tell the child, clap hands. That's my instruction. The child claps, and then I reward it. And that is the reinforcer, okay? That whole thing is a trial. These trials have two other features associated with them. One is that there's prompts. So when a child doesn't know how to do something, you can model it or help the child in a variety of different ways. That's called a prompt. And then there's a particular period of time that's called the inter-trial interval, which occurs between each trial. And that differs per child. Some children like their trials to be pretty fast. Other children like it to be slower. When you're first starting, it's a little bit slower. When you get to a point where you're trying to practice fluency, then it's faster. All that aside, the whole concept of discrete trial training is that it is very structured like that, right? And the other very important component in DTT is that if the child fails the first time, that's okay. You just go ahead and present a second trial. And if they fail a second time, on the third trial, you must give a prompt or a model or some sort of help so that the child is successful and receives a reward. That's very important in DTT because it ensures that the child will be rewarded every third trial. Every 3 attempts, the child will receive a reward. And that's super important because in the beginning, as we all know, our kids kind of don't want to deal with this. They don't know what's going on. And of course, they might lose interest or attention. Another very important thing about discrete trial training is that the instructions that are given, that first part, are very short and they're very clear and concise. So for example, I wouldn't say, Joey, can you please clap your hands? I would say clap hands. Or in the very beginning, I might even say just clap. So it's kind of like when you teach a new language, you keep it to a very minimum number of words because the listener, the student, has an easier time of learning and paying attention to keywords, memorizing keywords as opposed to long sentences, which for our kids, you really have to think about them as they're not really comprehending the language. So we're trying to teach them a new language. So instructions need to be short. Now, let's put DTT aside for a minute and talk about NET. NET is natural environment training. Natural environment, and it is a form of ABA. It is much more loosely structured. There's very little structure to it, other than the fact that you still want to try to give an instruction, wait for a behavior to occur, and then when the behavior occurs, you reward it. So now, if you can imagine, you're walking around the house or you're in a room, you'll maybe pick something up and you'll say, oh, what is this? And the child will say, pen. And then you'll say, very nice. What do you do with a pen? It's much more loosely structured. It does not require a reward on the third attempt. It does not require short introductory sentences or instructions. And you can prompt it. In discrete trial, there's a whole hierarchy of prompts. Like you generally try to model less so that the child has a chance to do more on their own. In NET, you can take the child's hand and put it on an object. You can prompt in any direction you want. So it's a very effective, but it is definitely something that we at CARD at least do after discrete trial. So now going back to kind of how we teach at CARD, we definitely start with discrete trial. In fact, we start with a version of discrete trial that's called errorless, which means we don't just allow the child to make a mistake for the first 2 times and then make sure they're correct every 3rd time. We make sure the child makes no errors in the very beginning of teaching something. So if I say, clap, and the child has never heard that before, I'm not going to say clap, no, clap, no, and then finally model it for the child. I would just model it from the very beginning, and I would reward the child every time, and then I would gradually take away my prompt, right? That way the child is very successful from the very beginning. And then we gradually go into discrete trial. The bulk of our first year of intervention with a 3-year-old would be discrete trial. And the reason is that you just learn a lot faster with discrete trial. It's kind of like, learning to do your scales and practicing piano or intensive tutoring versus just kind of picking things up in the natural environment, which is a lot slower. So unless your child is extremely high functioning and is speaking already and just kind of has a very, very few symptoms of advanced social language deficit or conversational language deficits, then I would not be doing NET at this point. Your child has just started and has the symptoms of autism, such as no language or very minimal speech and language, minimal eye contact, minimal compliance, minimal identification of receptive concepts, etc. I would really very sincerely recommend that you switch to DTT. And then when things are mastered in discrete trial, they will go naturally or should naturally go into an NET format. So for us at CARD, we start with an errorless process, we go to DTT, and then we go to NET and fluency. And basically, we just want to make sure that everything that we teach in a discrete trial format is applicable to the natural environment and that the child is using it and interacting in the natural environment appropriately. But going straight to NET, it either, in my mind, in my opinion, either won't work or it's at best, it'll delay things. And here's what's very important. We don't have time to delay things for our kids. Our kids need to get through this as fast as possible, because by the time they hit 5 and 6, now you have academic stuff that adds on to the child's requirements as well. And then you just run out of time. So time is extremely valuable right now at age 3. And I would really recommend that you do DTT.
Absolutely. So I just want to say to Mary, who's written in a couple of more times, who started saying, what is CARD? She writes that she's in Georgia. There is a CARD office in Atlanta. So please, and for anybody else who's interested, go to centerforautism.com, go to the locations tab. You can either put in a zip code or a city, or you can put in a state, and it'll show you all the ones available. That is what is available currently in Georgia, although, new CARD offices open all the time. But so please check that out. I just want to thank Dr. Granpeesheh for being here. And I apologize profusely that we did not get through even half the questions, but we got some good information, and you can tune back in next week for more answers. I want to remind all of you that tomorrow, Coby Bird, fabulous young man on the autism spectrum. He's 17, about to be 18, and he is a working actor. He was on Speechless, then he was on The Good Doctor, and now he is one of the main characters on the hit Netflix show Locke and Key. He's going to talk with us about that and about what he's been doing during COVID and how he's discovered a new superhero in his life. I'll give you a hint. She was on the show yesterday. And then on Friday, for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, we've got the mother of all mothers. We've got Eustacia Cutler. She's going to be with us on Friday. She's got some really important things that she wants to share with autism parents. She is Temple Grandin's mother. That's why I say she's the mother of all mothers. And she says there's 4 things that we need to know to be able to help our kiddos to learn as much as possible. She's going to share that with us on Friday and then answer some of your questions. I've got room for a couple of more questions that I'm going over with her today. We're picking all the questions beforehand. Email me, s.penrod@autism-live.com, and tell me if you have a question that you want me to ask Eustacia Cutler. That's what's going on this week. Thank you, Dr. Grandpichet. Thank you, all of you, for being here. We just appreciate you so much. And we'll be back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we are coming to you live from my house and live from our producer's house. 2 very different places, 2 different cities, in fact. And later we're going to be live from somebody else's house as well. So somebody pretty fabulous, let me just say. Thrilled to be here with you on this Thursday morning. I have to tell you that yesterday was hilarious for me because in the afternoon I was in a meeting with a group of people and I said, man, today is just, I don't know, kicking my keister. Today's just been, you know, and I think part of it is psychologically because it's Tuesday and we're not even at hump day and we're not even, you know, it's just so, and I just kept going on about how, you know, Tuesday's just killing me. Tuesday just feels like it's been the longest day. And then finally they were like, except Shannon, today is Wednesday. And I was like, it is, thank goodness, because Tuesday has felt like it's 2 days long. I don't know if you're having that kind of a week, but you know, everybody keeps talking about how this is like Groundhog Day, that, you know, rinse and repeat. They're getting up every day and the days are running into each other. And, you know, it just gets really hard. I think for those of us that are working and have set schedules, that it's ever so slightly not quite that way. And yet there I was going, man, Tuesday is long. And it wasn't. It was Wednesday. And in fact, it was the end of the day Wednesday. No wonder why Tuesday seems so long. Hey, listen, we're going to be with you live for this entire hour. And we're going to be off the chart with some information and inspiration here, because our guest today is, honestly, I'm just going to weep because he just is one of my favorite people on the face of the planet, where I'm talking about Coby Bird. Coby Bird is going to be with us in just a little while. For those of you who are the wonderful Coby Bird fans, and I know that you guys are out there and watching, he's going to be joining us in about 17 minutes. So set your timers, go get your popcorn, because he's fabulous, right? And for those of you who don't know who Coby Bird is, I just don't know where you've been, but I'm thrilled to introduce you to this wonderful young man. We were talking about him with Temple Grandin the other day because he's remarkable. He's 17 years old, about to be 18, on the autism spectrum. He's a working actor is what he is. And we've known Coby since I believe he was 14. He started coming on the show when he was 14 and talking about acting and the different acting roles that he was doing. And, you know, during that time, Coby was on Speechless, and then he had a big role on The Good Doctor, which was just, I think it was life-changing for everybody in the autism community, because it was the first time that we were aware of someone on a hit TV show that was on the autism spectrum playing someone who was on the autism spectrum. And I think it just blew all of our doors off. And of course, all of a sudden that became, you know, much more normal, right? Because Coby forged the path. And then now Coby is one of the main characters in the hit Netflix show, Locke and Key. And if you have not been watching Locke and Key, I just want to say to you, congratulations, you now know what you're doing for the rest of the weekend, because it's super fabulous. Hey, we're saying hello to Johanny, who's watching from Pennsylvania. Woohoo. That's, you know, guys, write in, tell us where you're watching from. We'll make sure that we let Coby know. So super, like if you have a kiddo who's on the spectrum, this is going to be very exciting for you to watch this young man who, I'm just going to tell you, is remarkable in the way that he views the world and the way he views his autism. I went to see him deliver the keynote speech to the TACA conference back in the spring. And let me just tell you that there was not a dry eye in the house. This young man got up and spoke for an hour and had us all in pieces on the floor. And so inspirational. So we're so thrilled that Coby's going to be with us in a little bit here, and you could be writing in your questions for him right now. I also want to remind you that tomorrow, because we're not toying around here with April, right? We're making sure we bring you like the people that you really need to hear from. Tomorrow, we're having Temple Grandin's mother, Eustacia Cutler, on, and I can't wait for that as well. All right, but before all that, we want to make sure that you guys know how to connect with us. So if you're watching for the first time, please know that we are live in a variety of different places right now. We are live on our homepage, which is autism-live.com. We are, and Traven, you can show the graphic if you've got it there. We are live on YouTube right now. We are live on Facebook right now. We are live on Periscope, and we are live on Twitter. You can watch us live in any one of those places. And that will, you know, this is being recorded, and it will continue to play in all those places the rest of the day, and in some cases stay longer than that. Now, we also podcast this so that if you need to come back and watch it later on, or you want to go, hey, I want to watch Coby when he was a 14-year-old, then you would want to find one of the places that we podcast. Now, we podcast to obviously our YouTube channel. And you can go through our YouTube channel. We're also, you can find all of our videos at autism-live.com, and you can search them. You can put in Coby Bird and search and find when he's done red carpets for us. He's done a lot of things for us. But you can also find us on iTunes. It's a free download. You can download either just the sound or picture and sound. We are also available on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Deezer, just to name a few. And, you know, Cassidy Hooper was telling us at the beginning of the week that her podcast was on Anchor. We have to check that out, Traven. Maybe we need to be on Anchor too. I just don't know these things. But thrilled that we have all these different ways that you can find the information that we're doing today and the information that we've been doing for the last 8 years, almost 9 years. So check it out, all those different places. Now, I like to remind you at the start of the show that we have lots of great experts on the show. Please don't confuse me with one of them because I am not. My credential is simply that I am a mom of an individual who was diagnosed with autism as a child, and so I have an affinity with this larger community. And when I say larger community, because that's what Autism Live is for, I'm talking about, of course, individuals who are on the autism spectrum. We want to give them a voice, and we also want to give them a place to come and find information and inspiration and resources, right? But we also include in that larger community everyone who loves those individuals. Everyone who loves and cares about them, from parents to grandparents, aunts, uncles, spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, cousins, therapists, right? Teachers, all of those people, we want to welcome them here because we may not agree on a whole lot of different things, but we all know we agree on a couple of things. And that's that individuals on the autism spectrum deserve respect. They deserve resources. They deserve employment, right? They deserve dignity, and that we can all be working towards that happening and finding them supports to make all of those things happen. And it is not one size fits all, right? So that's what I love to talk about here. Thrilled that we are here with you guys to do that, and that you're here to talk with us as well. I want to say hello to somebody, but I'm afraid I'm going to slaughter their name. So Koyanfing, hello, how are you? Glad that you're here with us today. Okay, now on Thursdays, we like to start off the show with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani nani are the experts talking about. So you just saw a preview of what the jargon is today. It's okay. We can just go right to it, Traven. Sometimes we show you a fun graphic, but you know, it's all on the fly here. It's all on the fly. So our jargon term for today is imaginative play. And, you know, I'm somebody who loves the whole art of play, because I do feel like play gives us a place to fail safely. That if we are playing with a child and, you know, we're making believe, it's okay if they don't get it right 100% of the time. In fact, we can make it fun that they aren't getting it right 100% of the time, and teach them flexibility and realizing that when you don't get it right, it's not the be all end all, right? But there are a lot of different types of play. And sometimes when we go, oh, well, I want my child to be able to play, and they just aren't playing in the way that I imagined that they would, right? Sometimes it's helpful to segment it out and talk about the different kinds of play. So last week we talked about sociodramatic play. And then earlier this week we talked about functional pretend play. So let's take a look at what imaginative play is, because I feel like a lot of us, that's what we want to get to. So let's take a look at what our actual definition is. And we try to give actual definitions and make fun of them whenever possible. Well, that was a pretty handy dandy little segue. Imaginative play, using imagination to create objects, locations, scenarios, and situations where they do not already exist for the purpose of play. Well, you know what? There's not much to be made fun of there, but let's see if we can pare it down even more so that we can really begin to understand what this looks like. What's the difference between functional pretend play, for instance, and imaginative play? So let's take a look at what our working definition for play is. And I feel like when we know these things, we can start to see, okay, that's what my child is not doing. So imaginative play is making it up. So just to give you a little bit of context, when we were talking about the functional pretend play, that's when your child is, you know, you give them the fake cash register, right? And so they can play the cash register, and now we can take that into sociodramatic play, and we can say, now you are the owner of a shoe store, and I'm going to be the person who's going to come in, and I'm going to be the person who's buying shoes, right? But now anything can happen, right? And if we get to true imaginative play, we can be in the middle of the shoe store, and, you know, and I could say, it's an earthquake. And we all pretend that we're in an earthquake, and we just make it up as we go. And I'll tell you something, like, it sounds like, well, duh. But the truth of the matter is that sometimes our kids don't automatically jump to these things. This is why it's great when they have the opportunity to have a sibling or a play date. We always advocate for having the bossy girl in their class come over for a play date when it's not COVID, right? Because the bossy girl will say, now it's an earthquake and now you have to be doing this, right? And plus, which that mom loves it that you invited their bossy daughter over, because a lot of times the other kids won't invite them over. Now, in COVID times, we don't have the opportunity to invite the bossy girl from the class over, but we can do this. The truth of the matter is that when we get down on the floor and play with our kids, and by the way, this is, you know, something you can do with a 3-year-old, but it's absolutely something you can do with a 13-year-old. It just maybe gets a little bit more specific about what the things are that interest them. So it could be that, with a 13-year-old, let's say that we pick the thing that they're interested in and that we hone in on that and make an imaginative play. I know a 13-year-old that really loved classical music. And so the mom would put on NPR and play classical music. And then as the music would play, she would make up a story of what was happening to fit the music, sort of like what is the Fantasia? Yes. And so she would create pictures with her words, and then she would say to him, now you make it up, right? And what that does is it creates that flexibility that we all want, because flexibility is the core of being able then later to solve problems and be effective in doing that. So remember that we started with talking about the fact that play is that place where you can fail and it's okay. So if you aren't able to solve the problem in play, nothing, no harm, no foul, right? We just do it again the next time. But in life, sometimes when you can't solve the problem, it's very frustrating. So if we can teach it first in play, then we can get it later on. And imaginative play is a great way to do that. I got to watch my time. We don't want to be late for Coby. Okay, moving on. We always have a question of the day for you that we love to have you guys answer on Facebook. I know today it's an uphill climb because you're just going to want to talk to Coby. But our question is, have you watched Locke and Key yet? And if you haven't, what are you waiting for? It's available on Netflix. It's one of the hit shows on Netflix. And it's been, spoiler alert, it's been renewed for season 2, and we're really excited about that. But this is a super show. There are a couple of parts that are scary. So depending on how old your kiddo is, you might want to watch it first and then watch it with your kiddo. But there's some really cool things in it that even smaller kiddos will find really fascinating. So you got to be watching Locke and Key. And when you do, you'll see the fabulous Coby Bird on the show. Okay, moving on. We always have a topic this week. And boy, has this topic this week really made me start to think, right? Making lemonade. We're well into this isolation. We all thought it was going to be 14 days. And now we see, we're more than a month in for most of us. And it looks like it's going to be approximately, if not 14 more days, another month that we're going to be in this. So you got to start to find what are the things that are good in this and capitalize on them. So whatever you've got, and I've been saying to autism parents, this is a moment in time when everything has slowed down and you've got an opportunity to learn ways to connect with your child. And that connection can be watching a program on Netflix. It does not have to be you doing therapy and sitting down and learning how to do therapy, although lean into the professionals in your life and say, I want to be able to do this. How can I do it? It can be a time when you can, maybe you didn't have the time before to play tea and set up the stuffed animals and have a tea service for your little boy or your little girl, right? Maybe you didn't have the time before to, fill in the blank. What didn't you have the time for? Do you have the time to do it now? What's in your way? Let's make lemonade because we've been handed some lemons. But what I'm loving is hearing how people are making the most of it. And there are good things. We just have to look for them. Okay, so moving on, we've got this big show for you. I am so excited that we're going to be talking with Coby Bird momentarily. I'm looking to see if I have my tape, because I don't know if you guys know the story of what happened like 2 times ago when we had Coby Bird on the show. He's just a fabulous young man. And he's a personal friend of my family and of my son. And his mom is one of my favorite people and one of my best friends. She's one of my besties, right? So I get nervous when I'm interviewing people. And when I'm nervous, I talk too much. Here I am hosting a show. So I talked too much and I didn't let Coby talk enough. And people were writing in and saying, shut that woman up. What is wrong with her? There is something wrong with her. Somebody, put some tape over her mouth. So I watched the interview back and I was like, oh my gosh, they're entirely right. And I apologized profusely. And I said, I'm going to invite Coby back, but I'm going to put tape over my mouth and let him talk. And we did that. And I brought in some tape here earlier today, but I don't know what I did with it. I'll have to locate it. But I'm just going to try to ask a question and shut my pie hole. And please feel free to write in and go, Shannon, shut up. Because I can take it. But anyway, thrilled. And we've already got people writing in saying, I love Locke and Key. And another person saying, have you seen Autism the Musical on Netflix? And everybody should be watching that. I think next week we're having Lane Hall back to talk about the sequel, which debuts on Tuesday. I can't find the tape. Something has happened to the tape. I'll just, right. Okay. And that's not on Netflix. That is on HBO. Okay. So, and I want to just see what else you guys are writing in. Okay. Well, who else has, from Onehunga? I don't even know where Onehunga is. So I would love to hear about Onehunga and where on the map that is. Okay. Fabulous. You guys are just writing in and saying how much you love Locke and Key. And hi, hello. Anthony is watching from Vancouver, British Columbia. He can't wait to see Coby live on YouTube. So thrilled. Stay safe and take care. Thank you. All right, so it's time. Let's bring Coby in. And I'll try not to talk too much. Let's see. So Traven's letting him into the room. And is he there? I'm going to keep talking about him. I just want to say before he comes in there he is. Coby! Hello.
Hi, Shannon. Good to see you. It's been so long.
It is so good to see you. I miss you, Coby.
I miss you too. It's been a month.
It has. It's been a really long time. But Coby, our viewers are so excited that you're here. They've already been writing in and saying how much they love Locke and Key.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy that you're here too. So I already told them about the story about how I had to put tape on my mouth.
Oh, I remember that.
because
yeah.
Because I don't let you talk. Yeah. I'm already doing it. Okay, so let's start out by talking about Locke and Key.
Absolutely.
And what it has been like for you having a hit show on Netflix.
It has been such an amazing experience for me. It's crazy to think that only about almost 2 years ago, I was auditioning for the show and having no idea what it was, but then knowing the comic book, but just being part of the family and everything. The journey was just fantastic, and the awards coming after are even better. But being on the show, just filming and just being a part of everything, being on the red carpet, everything about it has just been so life-changing for me. It really has.
Wonderful. How did you find out that you got the role? Because people have this thought, Coby, that, roles just fall from the sky and there's no work that has to be done. What was the process and how did you find out that you did in fact got the role?
Absolutely. I did the audition back in November of 2018, and a week later they paid me for the role, which was amazing. And then we waited all the way to January, and then my agent actually called me, and my mom actually recorded me, and my agent told me about the role, and I was just shocked, but just so livid about it. And actually we just posted the video on Instagram. So if you want to see, you can check it out on my page. But it was just, I was so in my head for just a couple of weeks until we flew, because I was just so shocked, but also I was just so happy about it happening. But it was fantastic. It really, really was. And
you brought up the Instagram. Where do people need to go to follow your Instagram?
Absolutely. So you can follow me at the Coby Bird. So it's COBYBARD. So at the Coby Bird.
So THE though. You gotta say the Coby Bird.
Yeah. The Coby Bird.
And Coby is COBY, and Bird is like bird, which is fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you got and they can see the video of them telling you that you got the role.
Absolutely. And
So good.
My reaction was pretty fantastic. I was still looking back at it, and I was saying, oh my gosh, I literally just decided to do what I did, but you'll see, but it was pretty amazing. I slammed my hand on the table because I was so happy about it happening, and then literally my voice was just like my voice was all strained up. So I was saying, I got it. So
and you were 16 at that point. You got that at 16. You turned 17 while you were filming it, and now you're getting ready to turn 18, which is super cool.
In a month.
Wow.
It's pretty fantastic. I'm not gonna lie.
Time.
I can't believe I'm already gonna be 18. I remember meeting you when I was 14, and that's just pretty fantastic. It really is.
It seems like a long weekend to go. Okay, so back to Locke and Key. This was not filmed in Los Angeles. Where was this mostly filmed?
We filmed over in Toronto, Ontario. Just that area we filmed in Hamilton, and we actually filmed up in Nova Scotia for one scene in a small fishing town called Lunenburg, which was just fantastic. The entire village was just so amazing just to be in, just seeing it. It felt like we were in Europe. It was a pretty amazing experience. It really was.
And what was it like being on the set for this? I mean, when you're filming something, how many episodes is it?
10 episodes. 10 episodes.
10 1-hour episodes. And so you were up there for quite a while. And on the set with all these people, and here you were a 16-year-old, then 17-year-old on the spectrum. What was it like for you being on the set?
It felt like I was a kid again. It felt like I was on the Universal lot, but being around being around all the models and being in the sound stages, just everything, seeing the show come to life on screen, but just being there myself was just fantastic. Seeing all the keys, the props, everything just was if I were a kid, if I were 8 years old, I probably would be freaking out because I would just be so excited about being there. But since I wasn't able to tell anyone, I was saying the things I've seen on set are just fantastic. You're gonna like there's gonna be some amazing things happening in the show. But being on set was just fantastic. It really, really was.
I want you to know, Coby, that we got people writing in from all over the world. That Yana is writing in from Armenia. And wants from Armenia, and they said, Coby, so nice to see you.
Oh.
Love Locke and Key and Rufus. And Austin says, hi, Coby, love you, buddy. Just lots of love pouring in here. So yeah, I mean, when people watch the show, they'll see that there are some pretty incredible sets, and to be on them and to be, with those, like, so cool. But there's a fair amount of snow too. And it had to have been cold up there too. Was this your first time being in the snow? You're in LA, baby.
Yeah, I have been in snow, but not like the snow in Toronto. I mostly the snow I grew up in before Locke and Key was we would go on trips to Big Bear, or there was there were some places up north where we would go see that had falling snow, but not somewhere where you would be living daily in snow. So being in full on snow, being out in the cold, I loved it. I loved it without a doubt. Like it was so fantastic just to be there. But But for the first couple months, it was pretty much a polar vortex. We actually discovered something called freezing rain on a weather app, and I was saying, wait, hold on, there's freezing rain that exists. That I had no idea. So that was pretty amazing. But as time went by, we loved the snow, and it was cool. And it was cool because actually being in Toronto, we got to see the season change as the months went by, so it was pretty fantastic. And right at the end, it was summer, and it definitely was a good way to say goodbye to Toronto. But being in the snow, for the first 2 months was pretty fantastic.
And there were some actual scenes that you had to film where you were like out shoveling snow and all real snow, Coby.
The first scene the first scene I actually shot was in this shed in the middle of the forest, and it actually was snowing as we were filming. So the scene itself felt really realistic, and and having the snow come down, it wasn't dramatic, but it had a very good way of introducing Rufus, because actually that was the first scene where Rufus comes in and introduces himself. But being in that scene was just so cool. It probably was one of my favorite scenes because of all the production value and everything. It really was amazing.
And there were so many secrets that about what was, and I'm going to try not to do any spoiler alerts for those of you who haven't watched all 10 episodes. But you need to watch all 10 episodes, because stuff happens and you go, oh, and just when you think you haven't figured it out, it spins it all on its head. But there were so many secrets about who was in the cast, where you were filming, what happens, if it was going to follow the graphic novel. Was that hard for you to keep all those secrets and not tell all of us what was going on?
There were times where it was, but as soon as we announced that I was going to be in the show, it was fine for me. But the one thing I did was when someone asked me, I would want to tell them, because I love telling people everything about everything. Like I can go on for hours and hours about my favorite movie and what one of the best scenes are and why they're so amazing. But the one thing me and my mom went through was saying, just when someone would ask me, I would say, well, you just have to see for yourself. I can't tell you anything. You have to be surprised, because I don't want to spoil it to anyone, because I want them to experience it all blindly, because seeing something without having any reaction to it or any knowledge of it, going into the show with no expectations whatsoever, it makes the show much more entertaining. And it definitely it does for me with certain things. So I want to be able to make sure that nobody would go in with big spoilers, because actually it does get pretty twisty during the end of the season. But so definitely I didn't want to spoil anything. But as time went by, it definitely got a lot more simple.
And we should say, again, no spoiler alerts, but there's some pretty amazing things that happen with your character towards the end of the series.
Oh, yes.
So you don't want to miss that, you guys. Some pretty intense things. And maybe when season 2 comes out, I will want to ask you some more pointed questions about that. But I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it. But, so you guys had to go far away to do this, and you were a pretty tight-knit cast, I understand. Have you stayed in contact with the cast? Are you guys like a big family?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We all stay in contact on WhatsApp, and we just talk there whenever we need to. But I think it's amazing being a part of that family, because being a guest star on other shows like The Good Doctor it's like visiting people, but being in a family from start to finish, and being a part of that story from the entire journey, it's such an amazing. It's such a different perspective when you're in that kind of that kind of production. So it really is amazing.
Wow. So Michelle has written in and she says, hi, Coby. What was the most challenging scene to film and why? I don't know if we can tell that without any spoiler alerts, but what do you think?
I can try my best to keep, but so during the end of the series, I'm not going to say anything, but I do a big, there's a part with the big stunt, but I have a stunt double. It was probably the best scene I did in the entire show. But also at times it was the hardest because there were parts where I actually during the prologue before the stunt happened, I had to do something, and having to and they had a screwdriver, so so the way I was standing behind the screwdriver, it was the other way. So it was so awkward for me to pick it up because I would have to turn it around, because the problem is they want me to pick it up so quickly and stab it, but the problem is it was in the other direction, so I was actually unable to get to grab it. So finally they fixed it, but doing that scene itself was just fantastic, and having that challenge with it made it even more memorable. But
I love that that you enjoy the hard stuff. I think that's a hallmark of you, that you're like, okay, so this is challenging, and it's just that much more exciting. And somebody else said, have they confirmed the next season? And she says, no, spoiler alerts, I just started watching. And we're trying really hard to not give spoiler alerts, because I know some of you are just getting to it.
Yeah.
But they have confirmed season 2, have they not?
They have. Oh, yeah. They have. Yeah. It's fantastic. I was so happy to hear about it. I'm so excited to see what happens later on, because in the comics, it definitely gets pretty interesting. Even though the show is straying away from the books, I do feel as if they're going to introduce more keys, because they've only introduced a small portion of keys in the show. There's way more in the books, and it's
really?
But yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I did not know that. Has it been interesting for you, being like your popularity has gone through the roof, and now you're considered a role model for so many young people? Is that great for you, or is that challenging? What's that like for you?
I think it's amazing, because I've gotten so many messages from people, parents with kids who have autism, people with autism, teachers who teach special ed. I've gotten all sorts of messages, and just such amazing messages and things and questions, and people telling me, because of you, I'm gonna be an art. I want to be an artist. I want to be an actor. I want to be a writer. And it's just an amazing thing, because now people are, because of me, they say, hey, if you can do this, I can do that. So having to follow dreams, follow their dreams, even though they are different from others, that doesn't stop them. So I'm really happy about getting that message through, and it really does feel amazing that people are looking up to me and realizing, hey, I can do this. It's not just because I'm different from everyone else doesn't mean I can't follow my dream job or what I want to do when I grow up. It should, what you are doesn't define you. It's who you are. Who you are on the inside, and what makes you special is your personality and just who you are inside. Absolutely.
You always make me cry, Coby. You're such an inspiration. You always make me cry. Okay, and so do you have a favorite fan story? Since we were talking about how the fans have written to you, do you have a favorite fan story that just blew your doors off, that somebody wrote to you or came up to you? Or
well, I don't have any one-on-one fan stories, but actually I do have a lot of fan sets on Instagram, and that definitely is interesting. But I'm getting used to it. But I think it's amazing that there are people who are looking up to me and just loving the things that I'm doing and following my journey, because having people who support your journey, who support you in your journey and who you are, it really is amazing. And everyone watching me, it's really cool, because I've always wanted to be on the screen. People notice me, but I love acting. But I love acting just because acting is my passion. It's having people admire me, but also look up to me. I really do like that a lot. It definitely isn't what I expected as I've to do, but seeing it happen now is really amazing.
And somebody just wrote in and said, "You are so inspiring, young man," and I hold that true as well.
Oh, thank you so much.
Now, Brandon has a very unfair question, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But he wants to know, who is your favorite person to work with on the show, like to do scenes with? Was there anybody that you in particular, or did you just love everybody? You don't have to answer.
Everybody. I don't like picking favorites, but I loved everybody, and I even loved everybody who I didn't work with because even though we weren't in one-on-one scenes together, I still made a lot of friends with the cast who weren't with me in scenes, and that's what's amazing, because the entire cast is just full of amazing people. So many just kind, sweet people with good hearts, and they're just, and yeah, absolutely.
And your mom said that the whole cast and crew and the writers were just amazing people, that you guys had the best time, and I love hearing that. So Pamela said, "Hi, Coby, how are you?" Which I want to segue into talking about that, so here you are, you've done all this work, you come back from Toronto, you do the big red carpet, the show is out, and it's all very exciting. And then all of a sudden it's like COVID, now you got to go home and stay home. And you're coming to us from home. We're going to talk about all the cool stuff on your back wall there. But how are you doing with this staying at home phase?
I'm going to be completely honest with you, Shannon. I don't want to hold back from the truth, but I definitely want to tell you how I'm feeling. But it's been hard for me. I'm going to be honest with you. It's been really hard for me, and I'm sure it's hard for everybody. For me, it's been a challenge, not being able to go outside and not being able to do the things I normally do. Being stuck confined in my house. It's a lot. It really is. But the one thing I'm doing that's helping me calm down is having goals for when all when all this is over. But it's one day at a time, and me and my mom actually just started going for walks outside, just around the park for a quick moment, just to get out, because we've been stuck in our house for over a month and not even leaving it. And it feels good to be able to walk outside, to have the fresh air, to actually feel like we're outside. But even though we're going outside, I still am very wary about going outside, because it just isn't the same as going outside as I normally do. Like,
and are you wearing masks when you go out, Coby?
That's the hardest part too, because I want to be able to breathe the fresh air without having to wear a mask and gloves, and just going outside like I normally do. But the problem is I get so scared of just going outside, because it's too much for me. Like, I want to be able to go outside without having to have so many steps and so many specific things, just so I can go outside and enjoy the fresh air. And that really is a lot, but it's one step at a time, and we're getting through it. And I'm sure that everything is gonna end no time soon. But
being such a wonderful role model, and I appreciate you being honest with us and saying that this has been challenging, because I think anything about the truth is, we don't need that. But for people who are watching, who are also finding it challenging, or their kiddos are finding it challenging, what has worked for you? And that's not going to be what works for everybody, but what has worked for you when it gets stressful? What are you doing to help yourself?
I read a lot. I've been reading a lot, actually, honestly, a lot more than I've been watching TV, surprisingly. I'm a huge reader. I'm a huge fantasy novel geek. I love comic books and just everything fantasy and sci-fi related. And I've been reading Game of Thrones, and that definitely reading stories has been helping me cope with everything. Also, I've been listening to music. Music has always been the one thing to help me with everything. It sustains me, and it helps me reciprocate with with everything, and definitely is perfect for, and definitely music is perfect for what we're going through right now. So it definitely has helped a lot more for me. But I actually I added, I'm a huge Japanese music fan, and I actually, and I don't know what, I don't know why I did it, but I made this playlist that consists of Japanese music from the 80s, like classic, like all those classic songs. But I kept adding and adding more songs, to the point where I realized I had 30 hours of songs on my playlist, over almost 500 songs on there, and I actually had to delete some albums because actually they're taking up storage on my phone. So literally I have a playlist that consists of 400 songs on my phone, and I just listen to that when I'm ready to, and it goes on for hours and hours. So I can just listen. So I can just listen to it while I'm doing something, and it really helps a lot.
Wonderful. I mean, and the fact that you're finding the thing that you love and taking care of yourself in that way is a really fabulous thing. Can you tell us one good thing that has happened for you and your mom out of this having to stay home during this time? Is there one good thing? Because I keep asking everybody, what's the one thing that's good?
Just as being together. It's just as being together, being and having Zoom and FaceTime, and just that definitely is a big blessing for us, because we can still keep in touch with our family, and we can, and my mom, and we have people who are like family to us, and my mom has specific days of the week where she FaceTimes them, and she calls a happy hour, and she just talks to her friends, because we both need social. We both need socializing, even when we're distancing ourselves from the outside world. It helps us because honestly, it's in our nature to be social, and having conflict within that. It's a lot, but no matter what, there always is a way. There never is only one way. There's so many ways you can talk to someone, but it definitely is helping us with everything. It definitely isn't making us going crazy. Yeah.
None of us are going crazy. So what, out of everything, what's the thing that you miss the most, or is the thing that you're going to do first when this is all over?
I miss a lot of things. Two of the biggest things. The biggest thing I want to do is just walk on the beach, because I love the ocean. I love the beach. I've grown up on a beach. I was born in a beach town. So the beach has always been my most favorite thing. But also one of the biggest things I want to do is over in LA, there's a place called Little Tokyo, and there's this revolving sushi restaurant that we go to all the time. So that definitely is somewhere I want to go to, because that in a way, once all this is over, that will be our celebration for the world, definitely, for the world finally being
back, our new normal.
Being back to normal, but also changing in a big way. So that definitely is our celebration for finally being free from our homes for almost 2 months. But that definitely is something I look forward to doing. And like I said, goals, like having goals for doing things after everything. It really helps. It really helps, because at least no matter what, even though we're going through these times, we still have something to look forward to when all it is over, and that definitely is the resolution to everything.
I want to tell you some of the things that people are saying. People are saying you're such an inspiration, very much an inspiration. Raquel wants you to know that she loved the relationship between Brody and Rufus. I think we
I did
all did. Oh my gosh.
I did too.
So many people writing in saying that they love Japanese music too, and that they love music. I want to say hi to Sapphire. Sapphire is saying hi to both of us. Jeremy has written in and he says, this just makes me want to cry. Jeremy says, you make me more proud to be who I am. I too have autism. And somebody else says, totally agree with Jeremy. Now, somebody said, hi, Coby, you are so awesome. Some exciting news too. Autism advocate Dr. Temple Grandin heard about you and she'll try to take a look at your show. So I want to pivot a little bit because you're a fairly big fan of Temple Grandin's, and you just recently saw the movie, the HBO movie about her. And so I want to know, what did you think when you saw the movie?
I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic movie. And before I knew of Temple Grandin, but I didn't know all the amazing things she did. But finally seeing the movie, I finally understand that now. And it was she did out of everyone with autism. I think Temple Grandin's the person I can relate to the most because I've had the same, because I've had definitely a lot of the same problems she had growing up. So having someone I can relate to is really amazing.
And in what ways are you and Temple alike? What did you see in the movie that you went, oh yes, that's I'm like that?
A lot of things actually, but a lot of them I can't fully describe in words. There are some things I can, for example, I have visions in my head that are very vivid, but I can't explain what they are because they come out of nowhere. Like sometimes I'll be just thinking about something and then my mom will ask me, are you okay? What are you thinking about? And I said, I'm just thinking. I can't describe it. I have those thoughts in my head all the time, but also getting overwhelmed and being socially awkward. I definitely related that to that with Temple. In school obviously I was bullied a lot, and people thought I was crazy, and they would make fun of me for and they would make fun of me for having autism and for being different and for the way I talked and just for everything. And I felt and that was something I definitely related to the most.
Yeah. It just breaks my heart. I just the bullying part, it breaks my heart. If you had the opportunity to ask Temple Grandin anything at this point, we asked her the question the other day because that you and your mom had posed about, does she still have the cow squisher? But if there's something you would like to say to her or to ask her, what would it be? Yeah,
actually, I do have two questions, but the first one is does it ever get challenging to be a voice for autism? Like, does it ever get to a point where it gets too overwhelming, or does it get to a point where, or is it hard for you when someone approaches you and asks for an autograph in a photo? But does it ever get challenging or difficult for when you for being a voice, for being that voice, for being an inspiration for people with autism? That definitely is one of the biggest ones I have for her. And
I'm going to make sure that we ask her that question. But then what's the other question?
The other question is, what was it like having a movie that was based on you? What was it like having an actress play you, and how did it feel? Absolutely.
I think that's a great question. I can't wait to ask her that too. But I want to throw it back to you with the first question. Is it ever challenging and hard for you? I was when you did the keynote for TACA, was that in the fall or in the spring? I've lost all track of time.
That was in the fall.
Was it in the fall? It was so amazing, Coby.
Really
I still haven't recovered from it. To see you up there by yourself talking for an hour and
absolutely.
over, 900 people who gave you a standing ovation that just like wouldn't end because you were so amazing. And then afterwards, people lined up for well over an hour to take pictures with you and get an autograph. And I remember standing there and watching you as person after person came up. And I thought, you're still a 17-year-old on the spectrum. That can't be easy for you. Is it ever overwhelming to you, Coby?
It's no matter what. I think always it does get overwhelming for a lot of people. For me, yes, it does. The keynote I was nervous about doing before, but me and my mom with the steps we wrote the speech together, but most of it was just improv and it's me talking about my autism, but signing autographs, taking pictures, that it was fun. It was so amazing meeting everyone, but after that, but after all that was over, because actually I thought it was going to be at the night, but it wasn't. It was during the morning. But after all that was over, I slept for almost 2 days because
oh my gosh.
I was exhausted after that. I could not. I felt so just physically and mentally tired, but
I don't know how you could have felt anything but, because you gave it all.
Yeah.
You were amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I got to say too, your mom's pretty incredible. Your mom is one of my best friends, and she's an incredible person. We've been looking at this wall behind you because you guys are a little bit into Disneyland and into Disney, not period. I thought for sure when you were going to say, things that you missed, it was going to be going to Disneyland. Because I know that you guys go there occasionally. But all of these things on the back wall are things that your mom has made.
Oh, yeah.
She's amazing, right?
Everything. And I'm telling you, my mom is so good at what she does. It's just amazing to see everything she does and how she, in the idea she comes up in her head. And that definitely is something I have in common with mom. We both have ideas and we both want to share them. But seeing everything she does is just fantastic.
I just want to say that on Instagram, people can go to some Imagination Creations and see some of the things, like that wonderful Neverland clock up there. So some Imagination Creations, you can go there to see the things. But your mom does so many things. Your mom is good at so many things. And, over the years, you've done a lot of events for us, Coby. You did red carpets for us. And, watching you work the red carpet, I'm just going to be honest, you're better at it than I am. And, I make no bones about that. Coby is better at the red carpet than I am. But your mom,
that isn't
no,
true.
It's true. But I got to say too, that your mom also helps you to be prepared and has things on cards and your mom is like awesome. And
she's super.
She is super.
Yeah, she's super.
But I know that when it comes right down to it, I think she does a great job of preparing you for anything that might come. But then it's down to you. You step into the spotlight and you have to deliver. And when I've been watching you since you were 14, do different theater things. And then we watched you on Speechless, and then we watched you on The Good Doctor. And
now I'm here. Yeah.
And now here. And these people have not even seen you sing, Coby. And I'm telling you, you're Broadway bound. because this young man can sing, folks. He can sing, is what I'm saying. I don't know which, whether it's going to be American Idol or you're going to go to Broadway next. I don't know, but this boy can sing, you guys. But I'll tell you, when we started watching Locke and Key, we didn't think you were in the first episode. I don't know how I got that wrong, but you were in the first episode in a very poignant way. And I got to tell you, Coby, it raised every goosebump I ever thought about having in that first scene with you. It's just a brief moment, but for any of you who know anything about acting, for somebody to be able to do what Coby did in a second and a half in that first episode, it is some superior acting work, Coby.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna be honest. When I saw that scene, I wasn't, when I watched it, I wasn't viewing it as me being on screen, just someone else. But I thought that's a great way to introduce the character, to show that Rufus has such innocence. That's similar to a child, that he's a gentle giant. Just having that introduction is a perfect way to show a character in a show that comes later in the show.
Oh my gosh, so good.
Absolutely.
We've only got a minute left, but people, so somebody wrote it, Daniel wrote it and said, hello, I'm autistic and like what you're doing with this live show. Also, Coby Bird is a brilliant guest choice. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So much.
And somebody else said that J-pop is awesome, that they love J-pop. And once somebody said, once we get back to normal, I can't see, there we go. Once we get back to normal and I have my K-3 students with autism back with me, I'd love to show them clips of you so they can see others like themselves. Wouldn't that be lovely?
That'd be amazing.
And you guys, check out Coby's Instagram, the Coby Bird, because we can see you sing there, right? You've got clips of you singing.
I do, yes.
Oh my gosh.
I do.
Oh my gosh. I mean, just seriously, it's, so good. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but Coby, can I just tell you, I think I love you. My family loves you. We miss you. We can't wait to be able to get together. And
absolutely, yes.
We're going to try to have a karaoke night before we can all actually get together, but we're going to get together soon.
I'd love that.
Please hug your mother for me. I'm going to tell people if you want to see what she does, because she does some incredible custom work.
Fantastic.
Some imagination creations. Go to Instagram, follow Coby at the Coby Bird, and we just appreciate you so much for being here. I want to remind everybody, we're back here tomorrow with Temple Grandin's mother, Eustacia Cutler. So that will be super fantabulous, wonderful. And I'm going to make sure that Temple gets the questions that you had for her, Coby. And she said she was going to watch Locke and Key. So we can't wait to hear from her what she thinks about that. So Coby, thank you so much. Hug your mother for me.
Good seeing you again, Shannon. Bye, everyone.
Love you. And everybody, we're going to see you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning. We started to play.
Good morning to you.
Sorry, I forgot.
It's still morning for you.
It is still morning for us, and welcome everybody. We've had technical difficulties this morning, and we started to play the opener for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, which is what Fridays are. We've had all kinds of technical difficulties today, and so unfortunately Nancy can't join me, but I am Shannon Penrod, and you can see who is joining me here. It is the fabulous Eustacia Cutler, and we are so over the moon excited to have her here today. She is going to be here with us, with you and I, for the next hour live. She's got a lot that she wants to tell us and some questions that you guys had sent in earlier in the week that she is going to go over. And it's going to be an hour, one for the record books, right? But I just want to tell all of you as we start here, there's lots of ways to connect and watch the show. And somebody already has just written in, Eustacia, and said they just bought your book, A Thorn in My Pocket. And for those of you who have not read that, please make sure that you do. We're going to give you some information throughout the show about how you can connect with some of the things that Eustacia has done, but A Thorn in My Pocket is a must read. So thank you and congratulations. I want to tell people, and we're going to tell this a couple of times, but if you're looking, I know when we had Temple on Tuesday, we were talking about how it is difficult to get some books quickly, but if you order directly from the publisher, you can go to fhautism.com, go to Future Horizons, and not only can you order books, and hear what some of the things that Eustacia has said and some of the things that Temple has said, but you'll find information about an upcoming event that's happening with Eustacia in honor of Mother's Day. So check that out. It's coming up on May 8th. So, but Eustacia, you're here, and this is such an honor for us. And I can't say enough how thrilled I am to have you here. As a mom of an individual who was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, it's just an extra special treat to hear you and hear your words. So I'm going to shut up and let you talk, because I know that there's a lot of things that you wanted to share with us this morning, but I'm here with you and I'm not going anywhere.
Well, thank you and good morning. And it's a delight to be with you via Zoom. We live in a very difficult time right now. And the first rule that I learned 70 years ago when I was raising Temple in a much easier time is that there are no answers. There are only choices. But choices can be changed, and you will change them, and you will be changed by them. So you better just embroider that on a pillow and sleep on it every night. And know, too, that there's hope. We learn and we change, both us and our children. And that means, as time goes on, we make better choices. I think of the words of science writer Matt Ridley. He said, the genes are not the implacable little determinists we thought they were. The way their promoters turn on and off is entirely determined by external experience. And external experience is us. Also, our children are open to life, experience, and it will affect them. Never underestimate the value of education. And that being so, I'm going to start with a little education before we get to your questions. What is it, first of all, that we can do that our children can't do? It looks easy. Shannon, you and I have been talking to each other, feels social, feels spontaneous, but actually most of it is neurological. And this is what our children lack. It's either not in their neurology, or it's skewed, or maybe it's both. And what's lacking? The best illustration, and I've told it over and over, but it's so exact, I'm going to tell it again. It's about my youngest grandson, Nicholas. I have only grandsons. I have 5, and they're all grown men now. But Nicholas was a baby then. He was a baby just beginning to talk. And the first words that his grandmother heard him say were not Mama, Dada, but Oreo. He pointed to the cookie jar and he said Oreo. We all laughed, but I knew that that meant his neurology was complete. This is what he had that a lot of our children don't have. First of all, conceptual thinking, the idea of something. Nicholas understood the idea of what a cookie is for. Now you can say to an autistic child, point to the shovel. He can point to it. But if you say, what are you pointing to? Point to the thing you dig with. He's lost. He doesn't have the idea of what a shovel does. And he doesn't know, therefore he can't generalize. He doesn't know that his father's snow shovel and his little sandbox shovel are both shovels. He can't generalize. And the best example I can think of that is a young man that I know today who's about 30. Now, he lives here in New York City, and he's learned that he can cross the street when the light's green, and he can't cross the street when the light's red. So he knows enough on the streets right around where he lives. He's memorized them. What he can't do is understand that all streets operate the same way. He cannot generalize that all red and green lights mean the same thing. That limits him to the neighborhood where he's memorized the lights. Now, the next thing that Nicholas could do was context. Where are we? He understood already that he was in his high chair where he got things to eat. And if he wanted a cookie, he better speak up fast before somebody took him out of that place. Our children do not understand context. They cannot deal with prepositions. Temple had a lot of trouble with prepositions, understanding over, under, around, in between. They don't see the relationship of us to where we are, or one object to another, or even one idea to another. They don't understand relevance. Again, I think of a really smart Asperger man who can do all of these things. You see, what our children are very good at is logic and memory. He can memorize anything. He can do mathematical genius work, but he cannot understand context. And therefore, he's stuck driving a taxi cab. Now, the next thing Nicholas could do was shared information. He understood that we had a different mind from his, And he would get the idea of a cookie from his mind into our minds. And how did he do it? He looked at us and he pointed to the cookie jar. He didn't look at the cookie jar. He looked at us. He understood that's the way you share information. All this had taken place in a baby before he could barely talk. Now, at the moment, it's so, excuse me, I just dropped a page on the floor. Hold on.
Well, and while you're getting that, Eustacia, I just want to acknowledge that a lot of people have already started writing in and saying hello to you and sending you messages of love, saying how much they love Future Horizons, that Future Horizons writes great blogs. And they're just, the world is saying hello to you and saying you're such an incredible mother and advocate for all of us and for Temple, and that you inspire them. So I just wanted to share that everybody, somebody said, hi, beautiful mom. So it is so wonderful to be able to see you. So in a way, I'm glad your page dropped, so we had an opportunity for those people to spread some love on you.
Well, thank you. And it means everything to me. I think of all the people that have helped me all of my life and Temple's life, and I was too young and too dumb to know to thank them. I can only thank them today by trying to do some of what they gave me when Temple was growing up.
It's beautiful.
I just want to get this last point in,
yes,
because time always, things takes more time than we wish it did.
Yes.
Executive function. Nicholas could put it all together and act on it. Now, part of the problem, this is what I wanted to say, is autism sees everything, but they don't see how it connects. And they see the chairs, the floor, the podium, all in separate detail. And they can recall those details better than we can. They're great at memory and logic, but they can't put the details together meaningfully. So they memorize what's happened and figuring that tomorrow they'll know how to do it. Tomorrow's different. And the difference is not logical. There's no way to put the scene together the way it was yesterday. And this is why a lot of our children are rigid. They're trying to make the moment stand still. It doesn't stand still. And that's why it's important, as much as we can, to establish daily consistency and expectation. It helps anchor them. Now, I know you all want to know about Temple and you want to hear some answers to questions. And the first question that was on the list you gave me, Sharon, was, what was the worst moment? This leads up to it. Temple was born in 1947. As a baby, she was mute, and she had a strange stare that didn't connect. She couldn't make eye contact, she couldn't play peekaboo, and she didn't want to be touched. She'd pull away when I tried to hug her. Instead, she'd like to spit and go into gales of crazy laughter. At 2, I took her to Children's Hospital in Boston to Dr. Bronson Crothers. Now, Temple, there she was. This is the day of the big weep. They kept Temple there at Children's Hospital for 10 days observation. I went home and I wept as I have never wept again. I thought I was going to strangle on my own tears. I woke up the next morning and I realized tears were stopping me from thinking. I would never cry like that again. I would use these moments to think and figure out. It's very important, or it was to me. I never have cried like that again. I've tried to stop each moment, figure it out as best I could, and work from what I knew at that particular time. At the end of these 10 days, Dr. Carruthers said, she's autistic. And he proposed not, now we get into the Temple Grandin movie, these questions all overlap. What was the worst of the movie and what was the best of it? Well, one of the worst, and Temple always says, oh, mother hates that scene. I do. It was the scene where the doctor recommended institutionalizing Temple and that I stood up against him. Not only was it not what I did, so it wasn't true, it was also ludicrous. I don't know who wrote it, but in 1949, women didn't have any rights of any kind. And I was a little girl of 22 who didn't know anything and had a child with autism. Do you think I could have spoken up against the whole medical profession, which was all male? I couldn't have. We couldn't even get a charge card without a father's permission or a husband's permission. Now, this also applies to the people who helped Temple. Dr. Carruthers told me who to take Temple to for speech lessons, and it was a Mrs. Reynolds, and she had a little school in her basement. Now, that was the day. Today, she would be the director of an established and funded school. Then she was just a woman. Women were allowed to teach, to be nurses, and to be stenographers. That's all we were allowed. This school, it did exist. And Dr. Carruthers knew it existed, which is part of the miracle of going to him. When you, one of the things you asked is what helped most in raising Temple? Luck. And at least keeping my mind on the situation so that I could recognize my luck when it came along. And as soon as I met Mrs. Reynolds and took Temple to her little school, I knew we were on a good track. It took Temple 3 years to learn to talk. And as you all know, she hasn't stopped talking ever since. So, but she learned something else equally important. There were other children in the class, and she saw herself for the first time in relation to other people her own age. And a doctor years later said to me, do you realize that was as important a lesson as learning to speak? Now, what was I going to say? Yes, and Temple had to learn. Now we get into rules. How did I teach her rules? Some of them, she had to learn other ways. And one of them was she had to wait her turn to be helped by Mrs. Reynolds. And Mrs. Reynolds took them into a separate room, those who needed help. And Temple learned then that rule. And it was a big, she was only 2. And my point is, the younger you learn these things, the younger the child is before the autism pattern is fully established. You're getting started another pattern, a better one. Now, I didn't understand that when I was taking it there, but I kind of began to get a feeling about it. And I began to make other choices for Temple's future, better choices. A great thing about choices is if they don't work, choose something else. There's no hard and fast rule. Now, again, this is 1949. These accomplished women all knew each other, and they'd worked simple solutions out. Mrs. Reynolds told me to take Temple to Mrs. Huckle. Mrs. Huckle ran a little summer camp for children on the autism spectrum. Temple stayed there 3 days a week, and she liked it. It worked. And she began, again, there were other children there. They played together. This wasn't a lesson. They played games together. She began to understand how to be part of a group. And Mrs. Huckle said, I think Temple could be mainstreamed at 5 if you've got a little country day school and they understood her history. I took Temple to Dedham Country Day School. We lived in Dedham, Mass, about a half hour outside of Boston. And it was the little country day school that all the neighborhood children went to. I told them the story to Mr. Ladd, who was what do you call him then? He was the head of the school. And to Mrs. Deach, who was head of the pre-K through 3rd grade department. They listened to the story. Now, here's where parents come in. Mr. Ladd said to me, we will take Temple because we think we can work with you. We have turned down other parents, other children, because we didn't think we could work with the parents. It's a joint journey, and all of it is on the job training. Now, and what happened then with Mrs. Deach? She and I talked almost every day. And this meant that Mrs. Deach knew what happened at home. I knew what happened at school. It held Temple to expectation. She began to realize what was expected from her. And it also held her to consistency. Again, it grounded her. Expectation and consistency. And Temple was happy in the school. These were the children in the neighborhood where she lived, and she began to play with them. Now, there were days when Temple couldn't manage school, and Mrs. Deach would call me and say, can you come and get her, take her home? Yes. And she used those times to explain to the other children in the class about autism. So now that they're all in their 70s, they feel they had a role in bringing up their famous friend, Temple Grandin. So now the other thing that Temple learned was, I have to play games by the other children's rules. Otherwise, they won't let me play. Now, when I talked to the woman who does Sesame Street, she said, oh, that's terrible. I said, no, you don't understand. This is the way we play hide and seek. This is the way we play capture the flag. Games have rules. If you don't want to play the game, fine, don't play it. But if you want to join the game, these are the rules of the game. And Temple learned at 5 years old, I have to play the games the way the other kids play them, or they won't let me play. Now, girls are more social than boys are. Temple wanted to be with the children. Sometimes you've got autistic children, generally a boy, doesn't care whether he's part of the group. She wanted it. Was a big step forward. I don't know how you make children want it who don't want it. That is it. Now, Temple was happy at Dedham. Where's my list of questions? Because I have other questions. That takes care of the darkest moment. I'm saving the sibling question for the end. The movie. Oh, I know what I wanted to tell you about the movie. Yes, there was that fake scene. There were other scenes that weren't true. But Julia Ormond played me in the movie. And she had read the book that you just mentioned, A Thorn in My Pocket. And that comes from a story that I picked up from a teacher I had at Harvard, who was a close friend of Robert Frost's. And I told him I was nervous coming back to college late in life. And he said his friend Robert Frost was nervous about lecturing, which he took too late in life, and he wasn't comfortable with it. And Frost said to him, I always carry something in my pocket I can touch when I'm talking, so I'll remember who I am. Lately, it's been a thorn. That's where the title of the book comes from. And Julia said to me, every scene I played, I kept a thorn in my pocket. Now, she won an Emmy, and she gave it to me. And which was, does anybody give up something like that? I finally decided we have to give this to a big autism organization that is in White Plains outside of New York. It's part of the big medical conglomeration of New York City. And we both agreed this was the place where it should go. So they put it in a beautiful glass case with the story beside it. And mothers come and they touch the case. They look at it and they remember the story. So that's the very good part of the movie. She and I, Julia and I, have been close friends ever since. That's the movie. Oh yeah, how did I get Temple to listen and obey? This was not as hard again because it was started early. You see, these patterns, these rules, which began to be established at 2 before she was old enough to rebel against me or hit me, as many autistic children do. They hit their mothers. The school also had rules, and that includes, there's a question in here about manners. That's what I wanted to include. Wait a sec. It was.
I think it was simply how did you get her to care about manners?
How did I get it? That was it. You're right. How did I get her to care about manners? For one thing, was a more mannered culture. For another, we all ate together. And that included lunch at the school. And they sat at a little table. The teacher sat at the head of the table. They all ate. They all had to have manners. The teacher saw to it. We don't do that now, and it's a loss. One day, Temple came home and she said to me, oh, I can't stand the way Johnny Archibald eats. He opens his mouth. It looks like a dump truck with all that food rolling around. And I said, well, now you know why I ask you to close your mouth. Yep. She's closed her mouth. And she saw how the others responded. Children were used to eating together as a family. I'm not sure that happens all the time now. We have instant food. We didn't have instant food. We prepared it, and this is the meal, and we will all sit down together and eat it. Now, Temple was happy at Dedham Country Day School, but it only went through the 6th grade. And now we got into problems of a new school, because when we're into beginning of adolescence, and all children are struggling with adolescence. Nature gives them a new body, and new friends, and new clothes, and strange new feelings. Temple could no longer manage. And she didn't behave well. Again, the crazy laughter, what she thought was funny, wasn't funny to the other children. She took all their clothes when they were at gym and mixed them up in different lockers. Well, now it was a girls' school, and all these little girls had new clothes. They also had no way to get to their next class because they couldn't find their clothes. Not surprisingly, they were angry at Temple and yelled at her, and Temple hit one of them with a book. A perfectly usual spat between adolescent girls, and of no consequence. But the headmaster of that school came after Temple, and I know this by heart. Temple answered the phone, as all children did in those days. They loved the phone. And the headmaster, instead of saying, "Temple, may I speak to your mother?" he said to her, "You are a menace to society. Don't come back after Christmas vacation." An appalling thing for a grown man to do to a child. What was that compared to hitting a child with a book? Two little arguing girls of 12? It presented a problem. And again, the question of what helped most in Temple's life? We got luck again. By some lucky coincidence, I was working on a documentary on autism for WGBH in Boston, and I had visited all the special schools from Maine down through Rhode Island. Now, what's always interested me is, why didn't this school that Temple was in know about these schools? There were quite a few of them in Cambridge. They should have known. They're educators. It's their job to know. So if I sound angry, I am. It makes me angry just to tell it all over again. But I saw these different country schools. So what I did was I picked out 3 schools that I thought were really very good. And I said to Temple, "You and I will go look at them, and you can decide which school you'd like to go to." Why was I in such a hurry? I knew that Temple would be shunned. There's one thing worse than being bullied, and that's being shunned. I thought, I'm getting her out of here, out of this town fast before that can happen. Well, Temple picked Hampshire Country School. Again, it was in the country, and this time it was a farm, and there were horses. And those days, Temple was crazy about horses. And she chose Hampshire Country School, a very good school run by a wonderful man. Now she did, the first 2 years there, she did no academic work of any kind. And I was worried about that. And Henry Patey, who ran the school, said, "Don't worry about it. When she gets through adolescence, she will get back her mind. Let it go." But he held her to chores, very good ones. If she liked horses so much and wanted to ride them, she would clean their stables, she would feed them, she would take care of all their needs. Now, here's where the question which came up about death. It hadn't happened in life in her life thus far and the life of all of my children. One of those horses at the school died. I don't know, you'd have to ask Temple what he died of, but it was a shock to Temple. For the first time, she saw the difference between life and death. The horse had died. That's where she learned about death.
I just wanted to let everybody know that the question that had been asked was that people, I wanted them to know that
I may
many
have
people
skipped,
wrote
yes,
in
yes.
and said, how did you teach her about death? Because
About
that seems
death,
to be a
yes,
hard
thank
concept.
you, yes,
thank you.
because sometimes things are so clear in my own mind that
I think it was
jump a step.
implied.
Yeah, but
I think it was implied, but I just
good.
wanted to share.
But,
So
yes.
many people are writing in and saying how inspirational you are too. I'm not going to interrupt you. You go right ahead, but I just wanted you to know that they're just loving you and loving
good.
hearing about all this.
Good,
And
because
she'll
our time,
continue to answer a lot of the questions that you guys have written in.
yes, let me
She's
get
answering
as I've gone along. Yes, that takes care of that question. He held her to all those duties. Now, Temple did get back to studying, and it wasn't easy. She worked hard to get her through her high school training. Now she wanted to go to college. She was too anxious to take exams. How did she do it? This is where friendship between headmasters matter. Henry Patey and what's his name? Frank DePietro was head of Hampshire, was head of Franklin Pierce College. I'm trying to get these names straight here. The two organizations were not very far apart. Now they're both teachers, so naturally they know each other. Henry Patey went to Frank DePietro and explained about the fact she couldn't take an exam. It was too threatening. And they decided to choose. They chose to let Temple go to Franklin Pierce without exams. Let's try it and see how it works. Thank God. And it worked. They also decided that Temple would return every week to the Hampshire School for support of whatever kind she needed. And that worked too. It kept the two connections. All I can think of is every child on the spectrum needs a champion, maybe several champions at different stages in her life. And those two men were champions. Now she wanted to get her MA, and Arizona State University had a math requirement and she couldn't carry it out. So between Franklin Pierce College and Arizona State University, they arranged a substitute course so she could go on there. It was not a good spell for Temple there at Arizona State University. This is what happens when people like the idea of helping autism and don't know anything about it. They didn't know how to help her. They were not Henry Patey or Frank DePietro. So it was an uneasy time in Temple's life. She did get through, and she did go on, bless her heart, to get her PhD. God bless. Yeah, I mean, Temple, I'm so proud of you. I have a note here. Let me just see if I've answered my questions because I'm fearful our time will run out. Let me see. I think it matters. Oh, what's my relationship to Temple today? It's wonderful. We are friends, and that means everything to me. And Temple called me the other day. Here we are, all housebound. She said, "Mother, he always goes, Mother, what are you doing about food? And Mark, who lives on our property, he knew how to make a connection on the internet. I'm not clever with the internet, for getting food to me here in New York. So between them, they arranged so that I could get food without having to go out and be endangered. Thank you, Temple. I really, really love it. And life is, the connections are amazing. The second time I did it, Mark called me on the phone. He said, well, the young man who's going to bring you food lives in your apartment. We talked. The world is much smaller than we think, too. We talked. And I said, I would like to contribute to what you're doing. He said, you can't. It's just a bunch of young people who have nothing to do. They can't do their jobs. So they all decided between them they would shop, particularly for the elderly who shouldn't be going out. I don't know if that's happening in your community. Do you know if it is? Do you know? Do you have that set up?
Yes, I mean, across the country, there are so many people who are volunteering and bringing food.
Bringing,
yes,
exactly.
it's amazing.
That's what, and I love the fact that it turned up to be in my own apartment.
I love that too.
Let me just, I had a, wait a minute, have I got, I think there's a question of what would I say to teach parents about parenting?
Yeah, is there something that you want parents, because they're asking again here too, they want to know what's the thing that you would tell parents? What's the one thing you would tell us?
I'm back to choices. Make choices. There are no answers. Make choices, and if they don't work, change them. Try something else and pay attention. Learn. It's a learning job for both you and the child. And you'll get better at it as you go along. And as you get better, you'll get more courageous. You'll be more active.
I want to cycle back to something that you,
now I have
okay.
I'm trying to tuck these things in. Where's quarter of and that's what I
time.
Just let me slip in here, because I want to put together siblings and change. What would I change? Oh, I would change the way I handled the siblings. They didn't get a fair shot at life. The problem for siblings is they be turned into little helpers, and they're too young to know that it's depriving them of their own development, of their own sense of self. It takes a toll. I would change that now. Now I have learned since two things. One, always save some time for the sibling. Something you will do together alone. Something, it can be just everybody else out of the kitchen. We're going to get dinner together. Something where you're not eyeball to eyeball, but an activity you do together. I love the mother who said, oh, it's easy. We go and get our toenails painted together. The other thing I would urge is a counselor. A child knows that parents are upset. They're much more aware than any of us are conscious of that as parents. They will tell a counselor what they won't tell their mother because they know it will upset their mother. They also are often too young to have any idea how to put it into words. I loved the counselor who I met later in life, who had a huge dollhouse and every kind of imaginable character, animal, furniture. And she would say to the child, you can furnish the doll's house. She said, the scenes they make tell her what the problem is. The other thing she did was, she said, I always make a little tent out of blankets and give the child a flashlight and say, you could go in. That's your tent. Then she said, I ask for permission to come in and join her. So together, the counselor and the child inside the little tent, she can then help the child to understand that she has a right to her own life. And that helps them to develop and rise above the differences. And also, what I've run into is they know what's absurd about life in a way that other children don't. And we can all use a little of that. So I think I've covered the questions.
Can I just cycle back though, too? Because I think
Yes.
there's a little bit of misunderstanding with at least one person. When you were talking in the beginning
Yeah.
about the lacks, the things that our children don't have, I
Yeah.
want to make sure that people understand that you were advocating for early intervention there because they can learn those things. It's not game
Yes,
over.
I should. Again, thank you. Thank you. I realized I had skipped over. I hadn't connected, talk about putting context together. The relevance of education to overcome these gaps in their neurology. It's learnable.
Yes, we had one adult
can
who wrote in
all-
and said, wait a second, I understand the difference between the shovel and the sandbox and the shovel. And I know that they're both shovels. And I just want to be clear with everybody that you weren't saying that that necessarily has to be across a lifetime, that individuals, given the opportunity early, can learn that.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. They can learn it. And Temple has learned it.
Yes, yes.
And my point is, if you don't understand those points, you don't know to teach them.
Yes, early intervention. I think we can all agree
Let's just
there.
embroider that on a pillow.
Yes, let's absolutely embroider that on a pillow. Okay, I know that you had something you wanted to read. Is it time for that or not? Okay.
Yes, there is,
All right.
because according to me, we've timed it perfectly.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
so let me read limbo. I looked up limbo in Webster's dictionary, and I found it describes the place where we parents of autistic children find we get stuck. Limbo is the abode of souls barred from heaven through no fault of their own, a place of confinement, a place or condition of neglect or oblivion. We've all been there. That abode where we struggle with the needs of our child, caused through no fault of our own or of our child's. A condition of social isolation, of neighborhood neglect or oblivion. Trapped, hedged in by a guilt that defies explanation, we accept what the world tells us we're supposed to feel. You must love your child, the world says, and intermittently we do. As my wise daughter-in-law said, it's easy to love people when they're lovable, not so easy when they're not. The inconstancy throws us off, floods us with a raging shame. Only in private do parents ever ask me if I got angry. What do I do with these feelings, they say? How do I take care of my child and hold myself together? They're old feelings, old questions. They turn up in Psalm 42. Why art thou cast down, O my soul? And why art thou so disquieted within me? Long ago, I thought the psalm was about those on the autism spectrum. Now I know the psalm is about us. And with it comes another question. How do I cope with the physical task of caring for my child and at the same time present myself to the world as the world says I'm supposed to be? The world says my child is a gift, a special gift that will transform me into a deeper, more meaningful person. But it's not happening. My child is driving me crazy. My child is isolating me from the world. So, in order to join the world and have my neighbors think well of me, in place of love, I will substitute glory. I will glorify my child, praise every step forward. I will tell the world my child is special. And our children, trapped in autism self-absorption, assume the assigned role. In truth, we've given them no other choice. Out of our own need, we've created a role-playing partnership. Our children are special, we are noble. And neighbors, out of their need for approval, accept the partnership. They too find our children a handful. They too have feelings they don't want to say out loud. Thus, with mutual need, we construct limbo. We're all of us excused. We're all of us there through no fault of our own. The setup feels safe, but it's not. Limbo is a static condition, a place where nothing grows. It only repeats. Growth, real growth, takes courage, honesty, hard work, and insight. The setup reminds me of an old dog racing story back in the days when we used to race whippets. The oval track and the starting gate were the same as those of a horse race, only instead of a jockey with a whip, there was a mechanical rabbit set to scamper ahead of the dogs, just always out of reach. In this race, the bell clanged, the gates opened, and the dogs sprang out after the mechanical rabbit, all except for one dog. He stopped. He looked around the track. He saw that it circled around. He ran around the track the other way. He met the rabbit and chewed it up. He didn't win. Racetracks are about betting, not about intelligence or insight, and certainly not about love. But in my heart, he was the winner. We don't have to chase after the mechanical rabbit just because the other dogs do. Stop, take a look. Somewhere in that whippet reaction, and it's not the track we thought was laid out for us to run. We may not win the worldly bet, but we will escape from limbo. In the escape, we will find our child and ourselves. Where was I? Let me
Go, you go right ahead.
just got one tag here for it. Where was I in all this? Temple, my darling, when you were born, I was very young. The world I came from, the world I married into, didn't ask for much from me, but social grace. The messy business of talent and passion weren't encouraged. And autism, passion gone awry, it was hard to excuse. I had to risk rejection, and I was rejected. I had to search for myself, dig under the skin and touch the glossy viscera, looking for what constitutes being human. Autism was a way to learn, yes, but not enough. Acting and writing took me deeper. Singing was my ticket to what I needed to see and touch and feel and be a part of. In the locked wards of the veterans' hospitals, I sang for men who had lost their minds in the Korean War, that war between World War II and the war in Vietnam. Men who, under the stress of battle's horror, had become catatonic, who stood all day, rigid and worthless, wordless. I sang to them. If I knew you were coming, I'd have baked a cake. And here and there, I could see a foot tap, ever so slightly, but tapping. They were there, somewhere inside the horror. I sang in the wards for the men who had lost their faces and were waiting for the reconstructive surgery they prayed would make them look human again. I studied autism and I studied retardation. I learned that nature can make cruel mistakes And the mistakes, however alarming, will live and talk and want attention and need love. I had to learn that madness and error are in us all, and it's only by a hair's breadth that we are who we are.
Wow. And they want to know what that is from, Eustacia. Those are your words. You wrote
I wrote them. It's all
Yes.
Limbo I wrote, and the last statement. They're all my own words.
Amazing. Absolutely.
And at the moment, I'm working on a book on the social history of autism. It's very old. We've always had it. And where do I find the best descriptions of it? In literature, books, novels, men who understood. The best example is Dickens, Nicholas Nickleby. When you read it, you understand that Spike wasn't retarded, as he was called. He was autistic. He doesn't talk like a retarded person. Dickens was thought about this, and he justified what he had done. He had worked as a child of 12. He was put to work at a bootblacking factory where they employed children of all kinds of mental and physical difficulties. He knew what he was talking about. I think we now have used up all our time.
We are so very close, but I'm glad, thank you for stopping for a second. I wish I could read everything that you have written. They wanted to know, is Limbo from A Thorn in My Pocket? I want to make sure you guys know.
No, it's not. It's a blog. If they go to the Temple Grandin Eustacia Cutler Autism Fund website.
Okay.
It's so on there. These are blogs that I've written, and there are definitely a lot of other ones. They're worth reading.
Yes. Well,
they're
I mean,
just
yes.
pieces that I wrote that seemed to me to the point.
Yes, absolutely. And we want to make sure that you guys know, you can also go to FH, which stands for Future Horizon Autism, FHautism.com. Not only can you find A Thorn in My Pocket there, but you can find links to other things. And Eustacia is going to be doing a special Mother's Day event for Future Horizons, and information will be available on the website about that. That you guys can check out it. And I want to let you know.
I think they're going to be. I will talk to Teresa, but I think they should be able to connect to it.
There we go. And I'm going to continue talking to Eustacia, and we've got stuff in the works for you guys as well down the road.
Yes, one and one. Yes, we will do that.
Which is very, very exciting. But I just could weep because this has been such an amazing, wonderful thing to be a part of. And it's been so lovely getting to talk to you as much as we got to talk this week. That has been honestly one of the most inspirational things in my life. See, I'm getting weepy. But Eustacia, I'm gonna cut a lot of these wonderful things and paste them and send them to you so that you can read some of see the love that has been shed upon you.
Send me the questions.
Yes,
because
I will.
Then I'd have a feeling about what's on your mind, what's troubling you. And when we did today, we just picked out general questions that were things that were pertinent to everybody. But sometimes this is why I do one-on-one talks. People have individual problems that they need to talk out.
And then I just want because I want to hear the website again for the foundation. So it's the Temple
Grandin Eustacia Cutler Autism Fund.
There we go.
And it's got a website. If you hit that, it'll come right up.
Yeah. We also posted Limbo on our link last night.
Please
you guys could read it. So it's there on our Facebook, on Autism Live's Facebook.
Yeah, and I also sent you the one about Ogden and the uncertainty principle.
Yes.
Which is a situation where the little boy who had Asperger was much smarter than the doctors. They didn't
Yeah.
pick up. The doctors didn't get what was troubling him. And
It's
I
beautiful.
thought this is where I also feel it's a double problem. It's not only does your child need your help, but so does the public need your help.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just want to thank all of you for being here. I feel like we've all been a part of something really incredible today, and thank you for making that possible for us, Eustacia. We are going to be back on Monday, and we have a whole array of shows for you next week because we're finishing April strong. I just want to give you an idea. We've got special education attorney Bonnie Yates with us on Monday, Alex Lynn, self-advocate from Autism Rocks. On Tuesday, we have Anita Lesko, self-advocate and author, talking about nutrition and her new book, The Food Revolution. On Wednesday, Dr. Doreen Granpichet answers your questions. And on Thursday, we're going to finish out the month of April with self-advocate Chelsea Darnell. It's going to be an amazing. And then on Friday, we have Elaine Hall from the Miracle Project joining us. I don't know if you saw on the Today Show, they were featuring yesterday the Miracle Project. And Autism the Musical Part 2 is premiering on HBO on Tuesday. She's going to talk with us about that. So Eustacia, thank you so much for being here, and thank all of you. We are going to be back on Monday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Eustacia. Mwah. Love you so.
Thanks to you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good weekend. Thank you, Eustacia.